Welcome back to Ronin Recap. Hope you enjoy this new video. Comment down below if you have any suggestions. Enjoy.
Was this Beetle? Locke was slightly stunned. After a few seconds, he was sure that the magical beast in front of him was Beetle. It was not Locke's fault that he didn't recognize it. Beetle was now much different from the one Locke had seen before. In terms of physique, Beetle was strong and energetic last time. Now, the whole dragon had lost a lot of weight, making people feel like it was covered with a layer of red skin on a dragon bone shelf, which was more terrifying than the addicts Locke had seen in his previous life. As for Beetle, its eyes were closed. It was still dying and didn't notice that Locke was here. After observing secretly for a while, Locke finally knew why Beetle looked like this. Along with the operation of the magic array, a red aura rushed out of its body, and then was transmitted to the magic array Locke had seen before through the magic array. This red aura may be the vigor of Beetle. That was to say, Beetle had been sucked dry. Judging from Beetle's situation, it seemed that it couldn't hold on for long. Looking at the skinny Beetle, Locke began to analyze in his mind. Now he had two choices. First, the person who could imprison Beetle of level 6 must be at least a level 6 practitioner. Therefore, he returned directly in the same way and contacted Athena. As long as Athena made a move, she would definitely defeat him. But the problem was that Beetle might have been dead before he came back. The second was to save Beetle now, and they ran away from the periphery of the Nariel Mountains of magical beasts. However, as long as the attacking magic array was activated, it would definitely attract the attention of the array setter. In the end, they might both fall here. With the help of the sword in the stone and the small universe, even if he met a level 6 practitioner, he could still fight for a while. In addition, with Beetle, he might have a chance to escape. In that case, let's do it. Before taking action, Locke released the divine consciousness again and checked the surroundings. After confirming that there was no one around, he was finally ready to take action. Taking a deep breath, the small universe in his body began to rotate crazily, and the divine power in the small universe was poured into the sword in the stone without reservation. The sword in the stone trembled slightly and suddenly burst out a powerful luster. Holding the sword in the stone, Locke directly hacked at the magic array. Boom! It seemed that the magic array had detected the attack. A light curtain suddenly lit up and collided with the sword in the stone. With the infusion of divine power into Locke's body, the level 6 weapon burst out its full power. Under the powerful attack, cracks gradually appeared on the light curtain of the magic array. Crack! The magic crystal stone supporting the magic array cracked with a crack. In the cave where Beetle had lived before, two men in black robes instantly opened their eyes and rushed toward Locke without hesitation. Just as the two men in black robes flew over, Beetle seemed to have sensed the movement outside. Beetle's eyelids moved, slowly and powerlessly opened, revealing its empty eyes. When it saw Locke, its eyes blinked as if it didn't believe what it saw. Surprise! Looking at Beetle, Locke said with a faint smile. As he spoke, he seemed to find something, and his face became a little more serious. If you are moved, maybe it's better to wait until the two of us survive. Wait. His chapter is updated by November. El Bean. Per meter. Beetle shook its head and stopped Locke, who was trying to run away. It struggled to stand up from the ground and drew its claws in the air, leaving golden lines wherever its claws passed. Soon, a complicated circular pattern appeared in front of them. The pattern slowly rotated, forming a vortex-like space behind it. After deploying the array textures, Beetle became a little less vigorous. It looked at Locke and said in an extremely weak voice, "Locke, this is the unique teleportation magic of the dragon. You can leave here." Locke stopped and didn't know what was going on. Was Beetle going to wait for death? Seeing that Locke didn't move, Beetle urged anxiously, "Hurry up. The opponent is very strong. My strength is very weak now. I can only support one to leave here." Sighing, Locke didn't say anything more and nodded helplessly. He bent his legs slightly and made a posture of sprinting. Obviously, the opponent's strength was completely beyond the two, so Beetle gave up struggling and let him leave directly. Looking at Locke, who was about to enter the teleportation magic, Beetle's eyes were full of gratitude. It said solemnly, "Locke, thank you." However, as soon as it finished his words, it saw a huge shoe kicking towards its head. Bang! The next moment, Beetle flew in the direction of the teleportation magic. After kicking Badal into the teleportation magic, Locke curled his lips and said, "I've tried my best to save you, not to let you die." The teleportation magic flashed and Badal disappeared in an instant. At the same time, Locke suddenly looked up at the sky in the distance. 3 powerful auras were approaching them quickly. Obviously, these people were the ones who had imprisoned Badal. He couldn't help cursing in a low voice, "I regret it. I should have let that bastard Badal stay." Although he was complaining in his heart, Locke's speed was not slow. His divine power had been gathered in all directions, making him full of strength. Taking a deep breath, Locke's eyes darkened slightly. He set his eyes on the periphery of the Nariel mountains of magical beasts and was ready to run for his life. Ding! Just as Locke was about to take action, a clear voice rang in his mind. System. The voice of the system, which he hadn't heard for a long time. Locke froze in place, forgetting to run for his life. Since he entered the Shalar Magic Academy, the system seemed to become less active and disappeared directly. He didn't expect that it would reappear at this critical moment. Congratulations, my host. You have completed a hidden task, save Badal. Ding. I'll give you a summoning card. The voice of the system continued to ring in Locke's ears. This is, system reward. Locke was completely stunned. At this moment, he felt a little unreal. Did it mean that he had obtained another summoning card? Or was it because he was too nervous just now that he had an auditory hallucination? Under suspicion, Locke hurriedly sank divine consciousness into the system space. Summoning card. When he saw the familiar card floating in the system space, Locke finally confirmed that he had obtained a summoning card. Looking at the summoning card in the system space, Locke giggled. In the blink of an eye, the 3 auras had already arrived above Locke. Taking a deep breath, Locke suppressed his excitement and gradually calmed down. If it had been before, he would have been extremely nervous at this moment. However, after obtaining the summoning card, he was full of confidence. Squinting his eyes, he looked up at the sky and saw the form of the 3 auras. On the left side, there were 2 human beings in black robes. They were wearing ghost masks, and their faces could not be seen clearly. However, judging from their auras, Locke could be sure that these 2 people were the 2 mysterious people he had met at the periphery of the Nariel mountains of magical beasts in Indika's city. The 2 should be level 6 mages. The other one was not a human, but a flying magical beast with a long jaw. Its whole body was gray, which was very similar to the vulture that Locke had seen in his previous life. The biggest difference was that besides its body shape, there was a row of sharp teeth on its sharp mouth, which looked extremely terrifying. It was a vulture of level 6. 2 level 6 mages, and 1 level 6 magical beast. Locke finally knew why Badal asked him to leave by himself. Fortunately, he had obtained a summoning card, or he would have been in trouble today. At the sight of the broken magic array, the tall and thin man in a black robe got furious. He stared at Locke with murderous intent in his eyes and asked in a gloomy tone, "Did you release that dragon?" Facing the furious tall and thin man in a black robe, Locke looked calm and said with a smile, "Obviously, I'm the only one here. You are courting death." Looking at Locke's indifferent expression, the tall and thin man in a black robe's eyes became more murderous. He said in a gloomy tone, "I can't believe it. I'll let you know what it means to beg for death." As he spoke, the dark magic element gathered around him. The universe in Locke's body began to work, ready to deal with the attack of the man in a black robe who was a little taller. At the same time, he gave out a trace of divine consciousness and entered the system space, ready to use the summoning card at any time. Just as the tall and thin man in a black robe was condensing the magic, another man who had been silent all the time, a short and stooping man in a black robe, suddenly stretched out his hand to stop the tall and thin man in a black robe. An old and hoarse voice came from under the mask, "Wait." The stooping man in a black robe was obviously more powerful. Hearing the words of the stooping man in a black robe, the tall and thin man in black robe looked at Locke fiercely. He seemed to be a little unwilling, but in the end, he gave a cold snort and dispersed the magic in his hand. After being sucked up for such a long time, the red dragon doesn't have much vigor now. Its strength has fallen greatly and it can't run far. We can catch it later. The stooping man said in an indifferent tone. While he was speaking, he looked at Locke and continued, "Boy, now I give you a chance to join us and become a member of us. I can let go of what happened just now." Hearing the stooping man's words, Locke was also stunned. He didn't expect that the man in black would offer him an invitation. According to the information he knew, these two people should be villains. If he joined them, he would also be a villain. How could he, a handsome man, be reduced to a villain? Although he had refused firmly in his heart, Locke still looked at the stooping man in a black robe and asked in a low voice, "What kind of force are you?" The stooping man in a black robe shook his head and said, "I'm sorry. We won't reveal any information before you join us. You just need to know that as long as you become a member of us, you will have the chance to become one of the strongest people in the world. In the future, it's not impossible for you to become a god who rules all the people. Become a god governing the world." Locke was slightly attracted by this man's description. Of course, this did not mean that he was interested in becoming the god the man in black robe said. After all, he had seen powerful gods like Athena and Hephaestus. He had read some books about history in the library of the Shalar Magic Academy, and found that the earliest records about the gods dated back thousands of years, so now many people doubted the authenticity of the gods. However, the two people in front of him were very determined, as if they were very sure of the true existence of the gods in this world. Were there gods in the Acacia continent? If they really existed, then how could these gods compare to Athena and the others? Locke was confused. He found that with the growth of his cultivation base, he seemed to have seen more secrets of Acacia continent. "Now, tell me your choice." Just as Locke sighed, the stooping man in a black robe said again. Locke took a deep breath and put aside the distracting thoughts. Now he was only at the early stage of the seventh sense. Why should he think about such a distant thing? He'd better solve the current predicament first. "Your offer is tempting. I don't seem to have any reason to refuse." He looked up at the stooping man in a black robe and shrugged. Then he changed the subject and said, "But I'm sorry." The two men in black robes, who had thought Locke had agreed, were stunned for a second. The stooping man took a look at Locke and was surprised that Locke would refuse him. After a while, he sighed and said regretfully, "What a pity. His chapter is updated by November. Bean. Coper meter." At the same time, a cold light burst out from his eyes. Judging from the talent of the young man in front of him, he could be ranked top even in the most powerful empires. However, such a genius was about to die here. The tall and thin man laughed evilly, and the dark magic energy continued to surge in front of him. Seeing that the other party was ready to make a move, Locke no longer hesitated. He took out the summoning card from the system space and quickly clicked on it with his index finger. The summoning card turned into dots of light, which scattered and gradually formed a light door that Locke felt very familiar with. The two men in black robes in the sky were also shocked when they saw Locke make a strange light door. In the light door, they felt a frightening force. The stooping man in a black robe shouted coldly, "Attack." As he spoke, the stooping man in a black robe rushed towards Locke, intending to catch Locke. Generally speaking, as long as the user was killed, the unfinished magic would dissipate. The tall and thin man in a black robe also smashed the magic in his hand towards the light door. However, before the magic got close to the light door, it was directly bounced away by it. On the other side, Locke had already been prepared. He retreated quickly and avoided the attack of the stooping man in a black robe. The man didn't give up and quickly condensed magic in his hand, throwing it toward Locke. Bang! Locke jumped up in a hurry. The rock behind him was blasted to pieces by the magic. No wonder he is a level 6 mage. Feeling the magic energy coming from behind him, Locke couldn't help but feel lucky that he had dodged it. If he was hit by the magic energy, he would either die or be injured. Just as Locke was rejoicing, he suddenly felt an extremely dangerous aura behind him. By instinct, Locke's body rolled to the side. Boom! A big pit was directly made by the vulture. On the other side, the tall and thin man in a black robe could do nothing to the light door, and the light door had been completely formed, surrounded by dense mist, full of sacred aura. The dense mist of the light door suddenly stirred. Seeing this, Locke's face lit up. He knew that the newly called god was coming. The tall and thin man in a black robe who was attacking the light door also felt a terrifying and threatening aura in the light door. His face darkened slightly and he immediately distanced himself from the light door. The stooping man in a black robe who was chasing after Locke also seemed to feel the powerful aura. His face changed and he chose to retreat decisively. The vulture also retreated far away, maintaining a safe distance from the light door. At this time, two men in black robes floated in the air and carefully looked in the direction of the light door. Seeing that the stooping man in a black robe and the vulture had retreated, Locke breathed a sigh of relief. In the face of the two strong men of level 6, he felt extremely frightened. Without the threat of the enemy, he held his breath and looked at the light door expectantly, wondering who he could call. Under the gaze of Locke and the two men in black robes, a sickle-shaped sharp blade came out of the light door. Then, a foot and a pair of boots stepped out, and a man with a black aura appeared. The black smoke gradually dissipated, and the figure was completely exposed. With a closer look, the person was covered in a black tattered robe and looked cold. With the appearance of the man, the surrounding temperature dropped more than 10 degrees. Locke, who was closest to him, felt a chill, which made him shiver. Thanatos, the god of death. When the man holding the sickle of death appeared, the name immediately appeared in Locke's mind. The god of death, one of the two gods serving Hades, was the god of destruction and life and death in the whole universe. He was one of the top figures in the nether world. Contrary to Locke's excitement, the two men in black robes in the sky looked scared. His eyes fixed on the man who suddenly appeared. The stooping man in a black robe was so nervous that he didn't dare to relax at all. He asked in a deep voice, "Who are you?" Magic had already condensed in front of the tall and thin man in a black robe. At the same time, he stared at Thanatos vigilantly. They sensed a chilling dark aura from him. They were the dark mages who practiced dark magic, so they were very sensitive to the dark aura. However, their dark magic was too weak in comparison with Thanatos's. Thanatos didn't say anything. He slowly raised his head and looked at the two men in black robes and the vulture with a long jaw. The moment Thanatos looked at them, the two men in black robes stiffened, as if they were stared at by a venomous snake. Fortunately, his eyes were fixed on Locke for a moment. Then he looked away and fixed his eyes on Locke. Swoosh. Seeing this, the two men in black robes breathed a sigh of relief. Only then did they find that their backs had been wet with cold sweat. "Hi, I'm Locke Capet. You can call me Locke." Locke introduced himself with a smile, reaching out his hand. Hearing Locke's words, the two could not help but feel nervous again. Was he the young man's savior? However, when he heard Locke's self-introduction, he stared at Locke without any expression on his face or blinking. It was strangely quiet. The smile on Locke's face gradually stiffened, and finally turned into a little embarrassment. He smiled awkwardly and impolitely and took back his stiff hand. System, open the attribute panel. After Locke finished reciting in his mind, the attribute panel appeared in front of him. Something was wrong. Host: Locke Capet. Race: human. Binding identity: leader of Lister. Profession: a cultivator. Level: the 7th sense. Summoning God 1, Athena. Fondness: friendship 70. Faith point: 4700. Summoning God 2, Asclepius. Fondness: friendship 34. Faith point: 5120. Summoning God 3, Hephaestus. Read latest chapters on Note VELB in com. Fondness: normal 70. Faith point: it could be opened after the divine temple was established. Summoning God 4, Sleipnir. Fondness: normal 10. Faith point: it could be opened after the divine temple was established. Summoning God 5, Thanatos. Fondness: indifference 0. Faith point: it could be opened after the divine temple was established. With the development of Lister, the faith point of Athena and Asclepius was also rapidly increasing. He was not surprised at all. Fondness was indifference. When Locke saw Thanatos's fondness for him, he was stunned. It seemed to be the first time that he had summoned a god who showed such a low level of fondness for him. Now, he finally knew why Thanatos was so indifferent to him. When Locke was watching the attribute panel, the stooping man in a black robe breathed a sigh of relief. Although he didn't know how Locke had summoned such a strange man, from the current situation, the man in front of him was not necessarily their enemy. "Sir, let me introduce myself first. We are from a great depraved organization." While speaking, the stooping man in a black robe observed Thanatos's expression, but he was disappointed. There was no change on his face. Was there anyone in the world who didn't know about the depraved organization? Seeing that there was no response from Thanatos, the stooping man in a black robe continued, "You must not know that the person we serve is a powerful magic god. As long as you join us, with your talent and strength, you will definitely be favored by our master. In the future, you will definitely have the chance to become a god. Puff. Hearing the words of the man in a black robe, Locke burst into laughter. To lure a powerful god with the opportunity to become a god. It sounded a little ridiculous. And it seemed that he overrated his own abilities. Hearing Locke's mockery, the tall and thin man in a black robe glared at Locke, his eyes burning with anger. If it weren't for Thanatos, he would have rushed over and torn Locke up. On the other side, Thanatos was still closing his eyes, feeling that the world was different from the original one. As for the stooping man in a black robe, he didn't bother to pay attention to him. Being ignored by Thanatos again, the tall and thin man in a black robe became a little angry. He said coldly, "Sir, are you a little arrogant? Although you are very powerful, I promise that our master was definitely someone you can't afford to offend." Thanatos slowly opened his eyes and looked expressionless. "Are you scared?" The tall and thin man in a black robe sneered in his heart when he saw Thanatos open his eyes. "Are you threatening me?" He raised his head and looked at the tall and thin man in a black robe. "You can understand like this." The tall and thin man in a black robe squinted and snorted coldly. This time, the stooping man in black robe did not stop the tall and thin man in black robe from speaking. He intended to use the tall and thin man in a black robe to put pressure on the man in front of him. After all, they were not weak and easy to be bullied. Thanatos slowly raised his hand and pointed at the stooping man in a black robe. Seeing him move, the two men in black robes felt a little frightened and made a defensive posture. At the same time, the stooping man in a black robe also held a black jade in his hand. As long as he crushed the jade, they could be immediately teleported out. This was the life-saving tool given to them by their boss. Looking at the two people who were carefully guarding against him, Thanatos smiled softly, as if he was watching two clowns' performance. At the same time, a strong aura burst out from his body. "Watch out!" The stooping man in a black robe shouted, his face changed dramatically when he felt the powerful momentum. However, it was too late. They only felt a strong pressure enveloping their bodies, as if the entire space had been solidified, and they were pressed within. An incomparable sense of fear rushed into their hearts. Now, they were really scared. "Wait, you can't kill us. We are," the tall and thin man in a black robe shouted in a trembling voice, but before he could finish his words, he seemed to be frozen. His eyes widened, and his stiff expression was mixed with a strong fear. Then his body dissipated like sand in the wind. Seeing his companion die in this way, the stooping black-robed man widened his eyes in horror. The magic power in his body was running crazily. He wanted to escape Thanatos's attack to crush the jade in his hand. But all this was in vain. He felt as if a mountain was pressing on his body, making his fingers unable to move, and there was an irresistible force tearing his body bit by bit. At the same time, he could see black particles sliding in front of his eyes one by one. He knew that they were formed by his body. In the strong pain, his consciousness gradually blurred. Finally, the two had been burned to ashes. Looking at the dust floating in the sky, a cold voice came through. "It doesn't matter who you are." Swoosh. Looking at the two level 6 mages, which were killed in an instant, Locke heaved a long sigh and couldn't help but sigh. These two people were also unlucky to threaten the god of death, who was known for his cruelty. Ouch. The moment the two men in black robes died, the vulture with a long jaw roared. It was originally controlled by the stooping man in a black robe. After his death, its spirit was also affected. The eyes of the vulture turned red, and its aura instantly soared. Obviously, with the death of the two men in black robes, the vulture had entered a state of losing control. Ouch. The vulture continued to howl, and orange energy columns were shot out from its blood-red eyes. Boom. The stone and trees around exploded under the energy column. On the other side, with a wave of his hand, Thanatos turned into a cloud of black mist and disappeared. "Hey, wait!" Locke shouted at him when he saw that Thanatos was about to leave. After all, now he had to rely on Thanatos. But it was too late. Thanatos ignored him and completely disappeared into his divine consciousness. Looking in the direction of Thanatos, Locke couldn't help but twitch his lips. Fuck, was this god of death so unreliable? As soon as Thanatos left, Locke became the only target of the vulture. Moreover, perhaps affected by the stooping black-robed man, its former master, the vulture had regarded Locke as its enemy subconsciously. Ouch! It roared at Locke, condensing an energy ball in its mouth and smashing it directly at him. Locke's face darkened at the sight of the vulture's attack. Fortunately, he had been prepared for it and his small universe worked. With the help of the divine power, his body turned into a shadow and rushed towards the periphery of the Nariel mountains of magical beasts. Although he was very confident in his own strength, he was not arrogant enough to deal with a mad level 6 magical beast. Boom! Behind Locke, there were horrible explosions. This is the small universe practice method of the legend Athena. On the peak, Thanatos, who was closing his eyes to feel the law power of this world, suddenly opened his eyes and looked in the direction of Locke. His pupils narrowed slightly, and he instantly saw Locke practice his cultivation method. I don't know who else has come to this world besides the legend Athena and me. The next moment, his body appeared in the position of the previous magic array again. The moment the magic array appeared, the black energy in the center of the energy windstorm began to tremble slightly, and the black energy continued to roll and quickly gathered in the middle. In just a short while, the black energy had completely disappeared. A baby, no, to be exact, a baby-sized monster appeared in the center of the energy windstorm. His face was ferocious, and his eyes were shining with a fierce dark red luster. His mouth was big, almost to the earlobes on both sides. And there were dim teeth in it. His body was as thin as a baby, and his flesh was exposed outside. It seemed that he had been peeled off, and fresh red blood vessels were wriggling. Ouch! Looking at Thanatos, the monster let out a shrill cry. All of a sudden, a black light shot straight at him. Thanatos waved his hand, and the black light directly shot in another direction. Is this the demon of this world? Looking at the demon, the smile on his face turned into endless coldness. He raised his left hand slowly and clamped the throat of the demon in the distance. It's too bad. The demon opened his eyes wide and struggled violently, with a strong fear in his eyes. As he spoke, Thanatos pinched the demon even more tightly. Bang! The next moment, with the pinch of Thanatos, the demon exploded on the spot. Boom! The magic array also seemed to be impacted. After a slight tremble, it exploded. Thanatos was instantly submerged in an explosion. On the other side, Locke was still running on the road. The vulture was in a state of madness, and its attack was far fiercer than the ordinary level 6 magical beasts. Fortunately, with the help of the rocks and ancient trees on the ground, Locke could still avoid the attack of the vulture. Boom! A huge stone was blasted into powder. Fuck! Looking at the flying stones, Locke felt a little scared. He cursed and ran faster. 2 hours later, a thin sweat appeared on Locke's forehead. Although his speed was not slow, the vulture was the flying magical beast in the sky and had an unparalleled advantage in speed. He must find a way to get rid of this beast. Hiding behind the rock, Locke secretly glanced at the vulture which was chasing after him. I had an idea. With the divine consciousness, he found that there seemed to be a group of magical beasts fighting in the distance. Among them, the strongest were level 5 magical beasts. Then let's make it worse. Locke wiped the sweat on his forehead and smiled. While thinking, he walked out from behind the rock. He condensed a fireball in his hand and threw it towards the vulture that was looking for him in the distance. Seeing that the attention of the vulture was attracted by him, he waved his hand. Ouch! Staring at Locke who was provoking him, the vulture with long eyes roared angrily. As for Locke, he had already disappeared from where he stood and rushed towards the place where he fought with the magical beast. Ouch! In the forest, dozens of magical beasts were fighting with each other, especially 2 level 5 magical beasts. They were covered in blood, and the ancient trees around them collapsed, and even the rocks were broken. Puff! A tiny figure appeared between the 2 level 5 magical beasts. All of a sudden, all the magical beasts stopped talking and focused their eyes on Locke. Hello. Locke smiled and greeted the 2 level 5 magical beasts. At the same time, 2 red and blue balls appeared in his hands and quickly merged together. I also give you a surprise. The 2 level 5 magical beasts saw a dazzling white light shining. Boom! The energy ball exploded. 2 level 5 magical beasts rushed out of the explosion in anger, looking around for Locke. Ouch! At the same time, the vulture had reached its position. Seeing 2 level 5 magical beasts standing in front of it, it didn't think at all. It directly shot 2 beams of light from its eyes and attacked 2 level 5 magical beasts. Boom! The 2 level 5 magical beasts quickly dodged. After dodging the attack of the vulture, the two level 5 magical beasts didn't retreat but directly attacked the vulture. They had already taken the vulture as a team with Locke. In the past, when facing a magical beast at a higher level than themselves, the two level 5 magical beasts would never dare to take the initiative to attack. But now, they were both affected by the mysterious energy and were so amok, so they had no extra scruples at all. Boom, boom, boom. The three magical beasts were in a fierce fight. In the distance, as the chief culprit, Locke sat down leisurely, took out a delicious apple from the system space and began to eat it. After eating the apple, Locke stood up, patted the dust on his clothes, and ran towards the periphery of the Narial Mountains of Magical Beasts. New N0VEL chapters are published on N0VELBIN, company per meter. However, there were still rumbling sounds from behind. The evening came. The sunset glow tinted the vast expanse of magnificent clouds. The majestic Narial Mountains of Magical Beasts stretched out in the clouds. Under the setting sun, a figure was pulled along by the rock. A gust of gentle breeze blew, lifting the cloth hanging on the figure. This scene looked very warm and artistic. However, if we took a closer look, we could find that the figure's face was dark, and his clothes had become strips of cloth, which could only cover the key parts. He was like a refugee from the sea of fire. Through the dirt on his face, we could see a slightly young face. This man, of course, was Locke, who had escaped for a day. Along the way, the vulture had completely targeted him. While he was running, he happened to meet two fierce level 5 magical beasts. With his unremitting efforts, the three magical beasts fought together. He had thought that he could take advantage of this opportunity to escape. But he still underestimated the determination of the vulture to kill him. Half an hour later, the vulture came after him, and he once again ran away. Swoosh. After taking a deep breath, Locke leaned against a stone tablet and felt completely relieved. What a bastard Thanatos is. Thinking of what had happened to him today, Locke felt indignant. While he was cursing, Locke moved his body downward and lay on the ground, with his hands under his head. He changed to a more comfortable posture and was ready to have a good rest. Ouch. Just as Locke was about to fall asleep, the familiar voice of magical beasts came from the distance again. Locke opened his eyes in an instant. There was a hint of helplessness in his anger. He looked in the direction of the voice and saw a black dot in the setting sun. The black dot grew larger and its appearance became clearer. It was just the vulture that had chased him all the way. Locke stood up feebly and cursed helplessly, "Bastard, if meet you in the Narial Mountains of Magical Beasts in the future, I will definitely kill you." Sighing, Locke bounced away like a cannonball. Boom. The familiar explosion sounded again behind Locke. He ran away again overnight. By this time, Locke had arrived at the periphery of the Narial Mountains of Magical Mountains. Boom. Locke dodged the energy ball released by the vulture numbly. In the forest a few miles away. There is a battle ahead. In the jungle, Mallory seemed to feel something all of a sudden. He waved his hand to tell everyone to stop first. However, the next moment, when he felt the energy fluctuation in front of him, he gradually became serious. We can feel the energy fluctuation even a few kilometers away. Maybe, it's level 6 magical beasts. Level 6 magical beasts. Hearing what Mallory said, other people's faces changed. Everyone else, except for Kipling and me, leave the Narial Mountains of Magical Beasts. Mallory told the 6 men behind him that they were all weak in face of the level 6 magical beasts. The 6 men nodded and retreated quickly to the periphery of the Narial Mountains of Magical Beasts. Kipling, we too are the strongest. Even level 6 magical beasts won't find us immediately. With a serious look on his face, Mallory looked in the direction of the explosion and said to a round-faced old man beside him, "Let's go." The two then rushed in the direction of the explosion. Boom. Locke jumped among the ancient trees to avoid the attack of the vulture. However, Locke, who used to be extremely flexible, was suddenly stunned. Bang. At this time, he was hit by the shock wave of the energy ball and flew directly into the distance. Puff. Locke made a huge human-shaped pit in the distance. Seeing that Locke was thrown away, the vulture didn't hesitate and rushed down towards Locke. It stretched out its claws which were enough to crush the rocks, intending to crush this tiny human into pieces. Facing the coming attack, Locke was not nervous at all. On the contrary, looking at the sky, he seemed to be relieved. In a few seconds, the distance between the vulture and Locke was less than 1 meter. The next moment, the sharp claws would fall on Locke, and Locke would also be cut into several pieces by the sharp blades. Looking at Locke, who was still calm and composed, it seemed that he was not in a life-and-death crisis at all. Bang! Just as the claw of the vulture was about to touch Locke, a muffled sound was heard. Then came the scream of the vulture. The vulture flew like a parabolic trajectory into the distance. Its huge body made a big hole in the ground, causing the ground to tremble a few times. Locke climbed out of the pit and patted the soil on his body. Looking at the slender figure in the distance, he couldn't help smiling. Yes, he had sensed the aura of Athena just now. When he was lost in thought, he was hit by the vulture. "Boy, you look so embarrassed." Sleipnir walked around Locke and gloated. Locke rolled his eyes and ignored the schadenfreude in Sleipnir's tone. He rushed to hug Athena. "You're finally here. I miss you so much. Brat, you were courting death." On a tree trunk in the distance, seeing that Locke dared to hug Athena, Thanatos sneered in his heart. "The woman in front of you was Athena, the legend of the divine world. You were so blatant in courting death." He could even imagine the scene where Locke was slapped away by Athena. Sure enough, he saw Athena raise her hand and gather all her strength in front of her. Something was wrong. However, when he saw what Athena was doing, he felt that something was wrong. Locke, who was hugging Athena, felt his head hit an invisible wall. Athena raised her hand and formed an energy wall between her and Locke, separating her from Locke. Looking at the dust on Locke's clothes, Athena's blue beautiful eyes were full of obvious disgust. "My clothes are all broken." Locke smiled awkwardly and said pitifully. During this period, all the 4 sets of clothes he brought were broken. Athena waved her hand, and a new set of clothes appeared in her hand. "Change it first." In the distance, Thanatos was completely stunned. Athena, who was famous for her coldness and violence, had never been so easygoing. Did Athena change her character? New N0VEL chapters are published on N0VELBIN, company per meter. Locke began to operate the small universe in his body. The water element in front of his body was accumulated and soon formed countless small drops of water. "Do you want to see me take a shower?" Seeing that Athena was still staring at him, Locke asked jokingly. Hearing Locke's words, Thanatos took a deep breath again. Sure enough, after coming to this world, Athena became gentle. If anyone dared to make such a joke with Athena in the past, they might have already reported it to Mr. Hades. Athena snorted, threw the clothes in her hand to Sleipnir and turned her back. At this time, the vulture struggled to its feet from the soil. It let out a long cry and rushed towards Athena angrily. Athena clapped her hands lightly, as if an invisible big hand appeared and directly sent the vulture flying out. Once again, the vulture was thrown to the ground. There was no fear in its eyes. It struggled to stand up like a walking corpse, and 2 powerful orange rays were shot out from its blood-red eyes. Boom! The explosion happened at the place where Athena was. Athena was instantly surrounded by the sea of fire, and a strong shock wave spread out from the center of the explosion. This scene happened to fall into Mallory's eyes and the man's eyes who rushed over. When the two felt the energy produced by the explosion, they both trembled. Jess swallowed and said in a trembling voice, "In such an explosion, the girl is most likely gone." "Alas, we are still late." Mallory sighed. When they saw the man and the horse not far from the battle scene, their mouths couldn't help twitching 2 times. They were speechless to the extreme. At this time, Locke had changed into new clothes and was lying leisurely on a rock. Sleipnir was also joking. They were not anxious at all. Finally, the flames began to disperse. The 2 men, who were about to move, froze again. A purple transparent light curtain enveloped Athena in the middle. Besides the position where Athena was standing, the ground had already been cracked by the energy of the explosion, and there were uneven pits everywhere. When Mallory and Kipling were still astonished, Athena had disappeared from where she stood and then appeared next to the vulture. The vulture's blood-red eyes also moved slightly. It seemed a little unexpected. Bang! The vulture was kicked into the sky by Athena. Then, Athena waved her hand, and the sword in the stone beside Locke turned into a beam of light and slid directly into the vulture in the air. Boom! The sky shone brightly with a loud bang. Puff! The vulture fell straight to the ground. Its heart was injured heavily, and its whole body was charred black. It died completely. Athena ignored the vulture in the distance and looked at the jungle. Under the gaze of Athena, a man in a shabby robe slowly walked out. This man, of course, was the god of death, Thanatos. However, at this time, Thanatos looked very strange. More precisely, he felt guilty. Stared by Athena, he felt a deep chill. He could tell that Athena was in a bad mood. Well, he admitted that he had wrongly estimated the relationship between Athena and the young man in front of him. Just as Thanatos became scared, Athena suddenly looked away and walked towards Locke and Sleipnir. He breathed a sigh of relief. Being stared at by Athena, he always had a creepy feeling. However, at this time, he heard Athena's cold voice, "I'll settle the matter with you later." When he heard this, Thanatos's cold face completely stiffened. Now he finally understood that Athena was still the powerful and violent goddess. She would just be gentle to Locke. "Old man, am I out of my mind?" Among the bushes, looking at the dead body of the vulture in the distance, Malloy asked in a trembling voice with a dull look. Next to him, Kipling was also shocked. It seemed that he couldn't believe what he saw. A young girl of 18 or 19 years old actually crushed a furious level 6 magical beast. It sounded ridiculous. He even doubted if he was dreaming. But all the things around them proved that everything in front of them was true. Now, there is only one possibility. Looking at Athena in the distance, Mallory said seriously, "Miss Athena is a super powerful person, but because of her strong strength, she has the effect of returning to her youth. As the strength of Icacia continent increased, the aging speed of practitioners would slow down. After reaching level 8, their faces would be fixed and no longer change. Even so, those who could become level 8 practitioners were all hundreds of years old, so they wouldn't be so young. However, some people loved beauty and used all kinds of methods to fix their faces at a young age. They regarded Athena as a strong woman. At the thought of the scene when Athena was going to look for Locke alone and the two of them were against it with all their might and told Athena how dangerous the Narial Mountains of magical beasts was, Mallory felt very ashamed and blushed. Those who can easily kill level 6 magical beasts are at least level 7 practitioners. He nodded in agreement. As he spoke, he withdrew his sight from the Thanatos in the distance and slowly analyzed, but this man. Although he couldn't feel any energy fluctuation from Thanatos, he could always feel a deep sense of threat. When Kipling was analyzing the situation, he suddenly found that Mallory, who had been silent for a long time, turned his head and found that Locke's face was pale, with sweat on his forehead, and there seemed to be something horrible in his eyes. Following Mallory's gaze, he found that the strange middle-aged man in a shabby black robe with a cold face was looking in their direction calmly. There seemed to be two nether fires from hell burning in his eyes, which made them feel cold all over. They were like sharp blades stabbing into their hearts. Fortunately, the man with horrible eyes just glanced at them and then looked away with no interest. But obviously, the two were found. The two walked out of the woods slowly. For the two people who suddenly came out, no one was surprised, no matter whether it was Locke, Athena or Sleipnir. The moment the two appeared, they already knew. Find new updates on NOVELB and COM. Master Athena. Mallory and Kipling bowed to Athena respectfully. Athena nodded slightly. It seemed that she had always been so cold except for Locke. Noticing that Athena didn't want to talk more, Mallory didn't continue. Instead, he looked at Locke. Mallory asked, "Locke, are you okay?" "Don't worry. No problem." Locke patted his chest and nodded with a smile. "This is Marquis Hyman's father, Kipling Hyman." Looking at the old man with the white beard and round face, Mallory introduced him. Then he added helplessly, "Now it seems that we are useless now." "Thank you." Locke bowed to them and said with a smile. The two were very thoughtful enough to risk their lives to go deep into the Narial Mountains of magical beasts to save him. "You're welcome, Mr. Capet." Kipling shook his head and sighed, "I've heard that Mr. Capet is handsome and talented. Today I see him and he is really extraordinary." "Thank you, Mr. Hyman," Locke replied modestly. After saying that, his face became serious. "I arrived at the depths of the Narial Mountains of magical beasts by accident." He knew the identities of the two men in black robes and the usage of the magic array, so he wanted to ask Mallory if he knew something. "You have reached the depth of the Narial Mountains of magical beasts." Mallory was a little stunned and took a deep breath. After making sure that he didn't mishear, he asked in disbelief. Locke nodded. In the depths of the Nariel Mountains of Magical Beasts, I saw a huge mysterious magic array. In the middle of the magic array, there was extremely dark energy. Then Locke told him what he had seen and heard in the depths of the Magical Beast mountain range. Of course, he didn't mention Betel and Thanatos. He just said that he had seen the magic array and encountered 2 dark mages. Since they saw that he was weak, they sent a level 6 vulture to chase him. With Locke's narration, Mallory became more and more serious. Then I ran all the way here. After saying that, Locke stopped and looked at Mallory. Judging from the expressions of Mallory and Kipling, he believed that Mallory must know something. Frowning, Mallory said with certainty, "These 2 dark mages must be members of the depraved organization." Depraved organization? Locke was stunned. It seemed that he had never heard of this organization before. Seeing the confusion on Locke's face, Mallory explained slowly, the depraved organization was an evil organization that suddenly appeared thousands of years ago. They spread the depraved thoughts, emphasized the survival of the fittest, and believed that the strong grasped the life right of the weak, and worshipped killing. They always provoked wars in various ways, causing conflicts among countries, among humans and among magical beasts, and finally killing each other. They hide in the dark and collect the vigor in the war in order to summon the evil god in exchange for the rewards of the evil god. But 1,000 years ago, several top forces on Acacia continent, such as Mage Guild and Swordsman Guild, united to attack the depraved organization. In the battle lasting for a few months, all the major forces were seriously injured, and even many strong warriors of level 8 and level 9 were killed or injured. Although the several major forces paid a great price, the depraved organization also suffered great losses and finally disappeared. At present, as long as the depraved organization emerges, it will be killed by the major forces, so they will usually be well hidden and will not easily show up. Several major forces worked together and ended up with Vitality severely injured. Locke was surprised. After all, the Mage Guild and Swordsman Guild were the most powerful forces on Acacia continent. With the joint efforts of several major forces, they were even seriously injured. It was conceivable how powerful this depraved organization was. After a moment of silence, Locke slowly digested the information he had just received. After more than 10 seconds, he slowly asked, "If we summon the evil god and demon, does it mean that besides Acacia continent, there is another plane?" Nodding his head, Mallory replied with a smile, "According to the records, there is indeed another plane, but it only exists in legends and no one has ever been there. As for the summoning skill of the depraved organization, who knows where it comes from?" At this time, the broadcast of the system suddenly sounded. Ding! A friendly reminder. 4 years later, there will be a drastic change in Acacia continent. I hope that host will work hard to improve his strength and strengthen the strength of Lister, so as to increase his self-protection ability and cope with future disaster. After listening to the broadcast of the system, Locke's eyes narrowed and he took a deep breath. 4 years later, would Acacia continent undergo a drastic change? Locke had no doubt about the warning of the system. The drastic change indicated by the system could not be underestimated. No one knew how many forces and people would be destroyed by this change. Before the drastic change occurred, he had to make Lister a more powerful city. All of a sudden, Locke felt great pressure. Seeing the serious look on Locke's face, Kipling thought that Locke was worried about the depraved organization. He comforted Locke, "Don't worry. After the battle happened thousands of years ago, the depraved organization is no longer strong. I will report the matter here to King City, and someone will be sent to deal with it." Locke came to himself and nodded with a smile without any explanation. "Now, let's leave the Nariel Mountains of Magical Beasts as soon as possible," said Mallory with a serious look at the depths of the Nariel Mountains of Magical Beasts. Although the problem of level 6 magical beasts had been solved, according to Locke, there were still 2 men in black robes inside. They were in great danger. "No, I won't leave for the time being. There are still some other things." Locke shook his head and said. Although Betel left with the help of the magic teleportation skill, he still needed to see what was going on with Betel. Mallory was a little stunned. He wanted to persuade Locke, but when he saw Athena in the distance, he couldn't say anything. With the help of Athena, a level 7 practitioner, there shouldn't be any other problems. Finally, Mallory nodded and said, "Be careful. Let's go." Athena stood up and put her hands on Sleipnir's back. To everyone's surprise, Locke also jumped behind Athena. Let's go, Locke said to Sleipnir after taking a look at Thanatos, the god of death in the distance. He planned to cool down the god of death first. He clearly remembered that he was abandoned by Thanatos. While Sleipnir was running, Locke asked, Sleipnir, can you find the location of Betel? Leave it to me. Sleipnir grinned and ran up to the sky. This 8-legged horse was also unusual. Watching the black dots gradually disappear in the air, Mallory and Kipling looked at each other in shock. Today, they really suffered too much shock. Show me the way. Just as the two were in a daze, a cold voice came. He didn't know when Thanatos had arrived. Sure enough, the man in black in front of them was not an ordinary person. Looking at the sudden appearance of Thanatos, Mallory and Kipling were shocked. The two were both level 5 practitioners, but the other party could come behind them unexpectedly. If the man in front of her had any evil intention. Thinking of this, the two of them suddenly felt a chill on their backs. Restraining his fear, Mallory said cautiously, please follow us. On the other side, Locke and the others galloped all the way to the west of the Nariel Mountains of Magical Beasts. Half an hour later, Locke saw a huge skinny figure flying in the distance. At that time, Betel was completely stunned by Locke's kick. It was not until he appeared in another place of the Nariel Mountains of Magical Beasts and fell down from the teleportation magic and smashed heavily on the ground that he came to his senses and realized that Locke had left the opportunity to him. After he recovered a little bit of his strength, he rushed over, intending to save Locke. Whoosh! However, as it was flying, it could only hear the sound of breaking through the air. Then, a huge figure appeared in front of him. Its pupils narrowed slightly, and the dragon power in its body burst out, ready to make a move at any time. But when it saw the figure in front of it clearly, its pupils suddenly dilated. After being stunned for 2 seconds, it shouted in surprise, Locke. Betel's loud voice amazed the countless flying magical beasts in the forest below. Be quiet, Sleipnir complained. Hearing Sleipnir's unhappy voice, Betel shrank its head and subconsciously glanced at Athena, who had beaten it up in front of Locke. Seeing that there was no anger on Athena's face, it asked carefully, Locke, how did you escape? It's a little complicated. Let's talk about it later. Looking at the skinny Betel, Locke asked with dissatisfaction and worry, are you all right? It will take a few months for me to recover. Betel pulled a long face and said indignantly, these two bastards, don't let me meet them, or I must tear them up bit by bit. It was not until Betel said that Locke knew the consequences. It turned out that one day, Betel was sleeping in his cave. At this time, two people suddenly came to make Betel submit to them. As the arrogant dragon, Betel naturally disdained it. Then there was a fierce battle between the two sides. The two men in black robes clamored to turn Betel into the nourishment of the magic array. In the end, Betel was locked up in the array to provide vigor for the demon. In the end, Locke decided to go deep into the Nariel Mountains of Magical Beasts to check the magic array. Although he might meet the members of other depraved organizations, he was full of confidence with the help of Athena. Soon, Locke and the others arrived at the depths of the Nariel Mountains of Magical Beasts. Most up-to-date novels are published on N0 Velb and Company per meter. Plants were still withered here, and magical beast corpses were all over the place. To Locke's surprise, some of the magical beasts they had just met had returned to normal, no longer filled with violent breath, and the previous mysterious energy had disappeared without a trace. Half an hour later, Locke came to the place where he had seen the magic array before. Only then did he find that the magic array had been broken into pieces, and the energy windstorm had disappeared. Sleipnir sniffed and said, there is the scent of that guy named Thanatos here. The other remaining aura should be the demon, that old man said. Frowning, Athena said in a tone of disdain, even a little variant of a low creature can be called a demon. It was estimated that the demon in the magic array wanted to make trouble for Thanatos, but he stopped it. Betel, since the people of the depraved organization have found this place, maybe you have been exposed. You'd better change to a safe place. Looking at Betel, Locke asked, can you go back to Dragon Island now? Hearing Dragon Island, Betel's eyes dimmed for a moment, and then it said in a low voice, I can't go back to Dragon Island. Feeling Betel's low mood, Locke knew that something must have happened to Betel, so it couldn't go back. It doesn't matter. You can go back one day. Trust me. Locke comforted it with a smile on his face. Sleipnir patted his chest and said, don't worry. I'm your boss. If there's anything, I'll help you solve it. Hearing what the two men said, Badal nodded with gratitude. Yes, I was protected by a strong man now. Humph, sooner or later, I will go back to Dragon Island above board and let everyone, no, all dragons show admiration for me. Knowing that Badal couldn't go back to Dragon Island, Locke thought for a while and suggested, I think you'd better go back to Lister with me. I agree. It's too dangerous to stay here. Badal nodded its head. It seemed that it was afraid of the people of the depraved organization. But your body, looking at Badal's huge body, Locke was suddenly at a loss. Thousands of years ago, the dragon race had moved out of Acacia continent and lived on Dragon Island. 700 years ago, a thief sneaked into Dragon Island, stole 3 dragon eggs and successfully hatched a little dragon. This little dragon was photographed by a top organization of Acacia continent, and it even signed the master and slave contract, which completely enraged the dragon race. At that time, the dragon race directly sent countless high-level giant dragons to destroy this force. This time, the people of Acacia continent didn't dare to pay attention to the little dragon anymore. Although they couldn't sign the master and slave contract, many still signed the equal contract with the dragon race and became fighting partners. Generally speaking, the giant dragon was born with strength above level 4. As time went by, its strength would gradually increase, and the adult's strength was generally level 7. The giant dragon, level 8 and above, was generally referred to as the giant dragon at the premium stage. Moreover, because of the power of the dragon race, all the dragons would be stronger than practitioners or magical beasts of the same level. Dragon Knight was also one of the most powerful legends on the continent. Although the shock power of the dragon race was strong enough, dragon blood, bones, dragon scales and other precious materials were still used. There were many people who took the risk to kill the dragon race. If others knew that there was a giant dragon in Naden County, it would be another uproar. I can handle it. After understanding what Locke meant, Badal closed his eyes and read something that Locke couldn't understand. Locke knew that this was the so-called magic of dragon language. With Badal's singing, a white light wrapped its body. To Locke's surprise, the white light gradually shrank and finally turned into the size of a palm. At last, the white light dissipated and a red flying magical beast appeared. For Locke, it was more like a skinny turkey with its hair pulled out. The turkey? No, it was Badal. Badal looked at his new appearance and asked, "How is it? Does it look good?" Locke could only nod stiffly. He only felt that Badal had changed very successfully. After all, no one would think of the dragon race in this way. Back then, many dragons race on the continent were killed miserably because of their exposed identities. Therefore, the dragon race has specially created magic that can change their appearance. Seeing that Locke was a little surprised, Badal could not help but feel proud. Isn't it just to change the appearance of bones, flesh and skin through strength? These are all that I left when I was a child. Looking at the complacent Badal, Sleipnir said. Badal wanted to refute, but when he saw Sleipnir's threatening eyes, he lowered his head. Let's go. There's nothing interesting here. Looking around, Athena said with boredom. Locke nodded. According to the instructions of the system, the disaster would arrive at Acacia continent in 4 years. Having stayed in the Naden County for so long, he had almost learned the magic, so he planned to go back to Lister as soon as possible. 4 hours later, Locke and Athena arrived at the Dika's city. They didn't pay much attention to this strange firebird that suddenly appeared and changed by Badal. It was not until they entered the Dika's city that Locke found that the city became lively again. During the training in Dika's city, many students were the inheritors of the big families in the county. When they knew that the Dika's city was besieged by magical beasts, these families were naturally very anxious and sent their strong family members to save their families. Therefore, as soon as the surge of beasts was stopped, a large number of people swarmed into Dika's city. Mr. Capet. On the way, many girls came up to greet Locke. They looked at him with admiration in their eyes. Young, powerful, and handsome, Locke had almost all the advantages. The boys looked at Locke with admiration in their eyes from time to time. Leaning against the pillar, Athena looked at the girls who were constantly flattering Locke. With a faint smile on her face, she asked, "There are so many girls. You must be very happy in your hearts. They just expressed their thanks for saving their life. They didn't mean anything else." Locke cleared his throat and said seriously. Seeing that Athena's face didn't change, he quickly said, "In the Narial Mountains of Magical Beasts, I have collected several kinds of magical beast meat that are suitable for barbecue. Let's have a barbecue tonight." Hearing that, Athena's eyes lit up and seemed to have forgotten what had happened just now. Seeing this, Locke breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, he began to feel happy. It seemed that Athena liked him more because she was jealous of such a trifle. In the evening, Locke and Athena sat in the yard and began to grill. "Now you know the importance of Locke Caput, don't you?" Taking a look at Locke and Athena, who were sitting in the fire, Sleipnir chuckled and told Thanatos his experience. "In Icacia continent, Locke is the boss. So, you'd better think about how to please Locke." Thanatos just snorted and turned a blind eye to Sleipnir's words. He was a god, a frightening god of death. How could he humbly please others? Sleipnir curled his lips and walked away slowly when he saw that Thanatos didn't appreciate his kindness. In the Narial Mountains of Magical Beasts had almost retreated, and some magical beasts, which had appeared in the village, had also been cleared up. After investigation, the surge of beasts in the Magical Beast Mountain had almost passed. The people of the Shalar Magic Academy would also go back to finish their training. At the same time, the news circulating in Dika's city had been spread to the whole Naden County. In a magnificent study, after listening to the detective's report, Count Brandon's face darkened to the extreme. He muttered, "Locke can defeat level 5 magical beasts, and he escaped from level 6 magical beasts. Why did a loser in the past become so powerful? We can't wait any longer." After a long silence, Count Brandon's eyes flashed with coldness. At this time, Butler Dinah came in from outside. "Mr. Count, Count Basil, Count Marcus and the other 2 counts are here. It seems that they have also received the news." Count Brandon's face darkened and said, "It seems that we need an emergency meeting." Butler Dinah nodded and quickly arranged it. In the meeting hall of the Brandon family. "I believe that everyone has got the news from the Dika's city." Seeing the 4 sitting down, Count Basil said slowly and straightly, "Locke will be the biggest variable in our action. Locke Caput doesn't belong to any force of the 2 counties. Maybe we can offer good enough conditions to prevent him from getting involved in the matter between us and Marquis Hyman," said Count Macas, who sat on the left. "Hyman's son is Locke's student. Now Locke is close to the Hyman family. Besides, don't forget what happened at the auction last time," another middle-aged fat man reminded. Hearing this, Count Marcus went silent. Count Basil's eyes twinkled with coldness. "I think we should work together to eliminate these unstable factors, such as Locke." "But Locke works for the Shalar Magic Academy," said Count Marcus slowly. "Besides, Locke has become so powerful in such a short time. Perhaps there is a more powerful force hidden behind him." Hearing this man's words, the others were also in a dilemma. The Shalar Magic Academy had been neutral all the time. If they killed the people of the Shalar Magic Academy, they would push the academy to the Hyman family. Moreover, if there were really more powerful forces behind Locke, then if they attacked Locke, they were courting death, weren't they? Count Brandon remained silent from beginning to end. It was not until the meeting hall completely quieted down that his calm voice slowly rang out, "Take action ahead of time." As he spoke, there was a trace of coldness in his tone. "Locke, you must die." Count Basil hesitated, but he agreed to kill Locke, but now it seemed that it was too risky. The others also showed hesitation. After scanning their faces, Count Brandon said slowly, "I've already contacted the Vic clan." Hearing the name, the Vic family, Count Basil and the others were slightly stunned. When they realized what Count Brandon meant, they were relieved. As long as the Vic family was willing to help, everything would be easily solved. The Vic family was one of the strongest forces in the kingdom. In the mansion of Marquis Hyman. Marquis Hyman took a deep breath and put down the letter, with incomparable shock in his eyes. Kill level 5 magical beasts. Crush level 6 magical beasts. A level 7 practitioner. Although he had tried his best to restrain himself, his fingers on the table were still trembling slightly. The girl he had seen was actually a level 7 practitioner. A level 7 practitioner, even in King City, was a top existence. He must try his best to win over Locke Caput and Athena. Instantly, Marquis Hyman made up his mind. At the same time, his eyes fell on the letter again, looking at the part about Joanna and Bryce. Bryce was also outstanding. No wonder he was my son. Marquis Hyman smiled with relief. Busan. After a long time, Marquis Hyman finally calmed down and shouted at the door. A middle-aged man about the same age as Marquis Hyman came in. The middle-aged man's eyes were sharp, and his previous sharpness was hidden by a gray robe. Mr. Marquis. The middle-aged man called Busan bowed to Marquis Hyman and greeted him respectfully. Seeing that Busan was so respectful, Marquis Hyman shook his head and said helplessly, "Boy, I've told you many times that we don't need to be so polite." Busan shook his head. His face was still cold. He said firmly, "Don't break the proper etiquette. Cancel all the government affairs for me. I will do nothing but pick up my child." Busan nodded, bowed and stepped back. After Busan left, Marquis Hyman's face gradually became serious. He took out a special envelope and a white letter from the dark box under the table. Next, it was time to report to the depraved organization. The next day, at the gate of the teleportation site. "Why haven't you come yet, Mrs. Hyman looked at the teleportation site uneasily, with concern and longing for her children in her eyes. Seeing that his wife was so anxious, Marquis Hyman grabbed Mrs. Hyman's hand and comforted her with a smile. "Don't worry. As long as Mallory and their father are here, they will be fine." Mrs. Hyman nodded and forced a smile, but she was still a little worried. In addition to Marquis Hyman, the Dean of the Office of Academic Affairs, Mrs. Bulliu and other people from other forces were present. Read latest chapters at NOVELB and Company per meter. "It's so lively today. What happened?" Looking at the grand scene, a young man passing by asked in confusion. Hearing his question, the people around turned around and looked at him with disdain. The meaning was obvious. "Where did you come from? You didn't even know this." Noticing the disdainful eyes of the crowd, the young man's face instantly turned red. Seeing the embarrassing look on the young man's face, a kind-hearted old man came to his rescue and explained, "The student who went to the Nariel Mountains of magical beasts to train in the Shalar Magic Academy has come back." Hearing this, the young man was slightly stunned. He scratched his head and asked in confusion, "Didn't they say that they encountered a surge of beasts?" "Who knows? According to the news, although we have encountered a surge of beasts, the casualty of the Shalar Magic Academy is not serious." While the two were talking, the signal light on the teleportation site began to flicker. Now, everyone's attention was focused on the teleportation site. The white light in the teleportation site was gradually extinguished, and a figure had appeared. The head of the group was Mallory and Kipling. Seeing the familiar building around, the students were in high spirits. They ran out of the teleportation site noisily and soon found their relatives to pick them up. Kipling walked towards Marquis Hyman first. "Father." Marquis Hyman and Mrs. Hyman bowed to Kipling. Shaking his head, Kipling complained, "Look at you. You have such a bad relationship with your son." Hearing that, Marquis Hyman smiled awkwardly. With a sigh, Kipling said, "Work it out. I'm going home." Then he waved goodbye to Bryce and Joanna and left. "Let's go." Joanna looked at the two in the distance. Marquis Hyman turned to Bryce with a complicated expression. Cindy looked at Marquis Hyman and then looked at Bryce with concern. She knew that Bryce didn't get along well with his family. Bryce took a deep breath and gave Cindy a reassuring smile. Then he let go of Cindy's hand and said, "See you at the academy later." Mrs. Hyman held Joanna in her arms for a long time before she let go of her. She held Joanna's face and asked with concern, "Are you tired after this training? Are you hurt?" Joanna shook her head. Mrs. Hyman was relieved to hear that Joanna was fine. Then she looked at Bryce and asked with concern, "Bryce, how about you? Are you hurt anywhere?" Noticing the concern in Mrs. Hyman's tone, Bryce felt warm in his heart. He took a deep breath to calm himself down and said slowly, "I'm fine, too." At this time, Marquis Hyman walked up to Bryce. He reached out his hand and patted Bryce on the shoulder, saying meaningfully, "Boy, I see that you are very close to the daughter of Henry. Do you want me to help you? That old man is very irritable." Bryce's face turned a little red, and the scene of Count Henry Tyson, who was wearing an iron glove and chasing after him, suddenly appeared in his mind. However, facing his father who had been indifferent to him for many years, Bryce still didn't know what to say. Knowing that there were still some misunderstandings between Bryce and he, Marquis Hyman was not in a hurry. He touched Bryce's slightly heavy shoulder and smiled with relief. "My son has grown up, too. At this time, the signal light of the teleportation site was on again. As the light in the teleportation site faded away, a figure gradually appeared. At the same time, a white light quickly flew out of the teleportation site and turned into a stream of light and disappeared in the sky. Did something fly over just now? One of them rubbed his eyes and said with uncertainty, "Follow newest stories at no.vl.com." It seems, yes. The man next to him also swallowed and said in an uncertain tone. Marquis Hyman and the others were also shocked. As for Mallory, he had seen Sleipnir's speed in the Nariel Mountains of magical beasts. He didn't lose his countenance. Locke and Athena slowly walked out of the teleportation site, followed by a man in a black robe. He was the cold-faced Thanatos, the god of death, and curiously looked around at Badal, who looked like a turkey. "Mr. Capet." Marquis Hyman greeted Locke first and then bowed to Athena, "Miss Athena." There was a flash of doubt in Mrs. Hyman's eyes. She could feel that when her husband greeted Athena, there was a trace of respect and flattery in his tone. But her husband was the Marquis. Why would he respect and please a weak girl? It was not her fault to be confused. As for Athena's strength, Marquis Hyman was very cautious and did not reveal it. After all, many powerful people like Athena were moody. If they triggered the taboo of the other party, it would be a disaster for the Hyman family. "Mr. Hyman, Mrs. Hyman." Locke nodded with a smile. As for Athena, she nodded slightly as a response. Mrs. Hyman was stunned again. Facing Athena's cold attitude, her husband didn't show any dissatisfaction. No, not only was he not angry, but he felt flattered and took it for granted. "Mr. Capet, please come to the Hyman family when you have time." Looking at Locke and Athena, Marquis Hyman sincerely invited them. Locke smiled and said, "Of course." In fact, according to the previous plan, the training of Grade 1 of Fire type had come to an end 2 days ago, but because of the surge of beasts, everyone came back 2 days later. Today, it was the day of the establishment of the Shalar Magic Academy. According to the arrangement, everyone had an afternoon break, and they would attend the dinner party held by the Academy in the evening. After saying goodbye to Marquis Hyman, Locke and the others went back to the villa in the Shalar Magic Academy. Although there were Thanatos and Badal in the villa, there were still many rooms, so it was not crowded. In order to regain its former heroic spirit, Badal began to cultivate in seclusion as soon as it entered the room. In the yard, with a broom in his hand, Locke walked up to Thanatos and said, "I'll leave the job of sweeping the floor to you from now on." His cold face suddenly froze. He stared at the broom for a long time. Then he slowly raised his head and looked at Locke, with a dangerous light shining in his eyes. "You want me to sweep the floor? Of course, you can't live in vain." Ignoring the threat in his eyes, Locke pouted and said, "No way," said Thanatos coldly. "Okay." Locke was not in a hurry. He put the broom on the table, pointed at the wooden door in the distance and sneered, "The exit is over there, and no one stops you." Thanatos was stunned. He looked at Sleipnir, who was sleeping comfortably, and then looked at Athena, who was reading a book on the chair. He retorted unconvinced, "Why can they do nothing? Sleipnir can take me out." With that, Locke smiled faintly and looked at Athena. As for why Athena doesn't work, maybe you need to ask her in person. Now he was not afraid of Thanatos. If it was someone else, he might have worried that it would affect fondness. But Thanatos was indifferent to his fondness. Was there still room for him to fall? "I'll ask her myself." Hearing Locke's words, Thanatos's mouth twitched. Did he dare? For a moment, Thanatos fell silent again. A few seconds later, he softened his tone. "Maybe I can do something else, not sweep the floor. That's what you need to do now." Locke shook his head. There was no room for negotiation in his tone. After saying that, Locke turned around and walked into the kitchen. Before leaving, he added slowly, "By the way, you can only do it by yourself. You can't use any other energy." After standing beside the broom for a long time, Thanatos seemed to accept his fate. He grabbed the broom and began to clean it silently. On the lawn in the distance, Sleipnir opened her eyes and glanced at Thanatos, who was sweeping the floor. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Why did you piss Locke off? He was a vengeful man. Now, as the god of death, he was sweeping the floor for others. In the afternoon, Locke and Athena arrived at the dinner party. Sleipnir was in a daze, sleeping. Badal, on the other hand, restored its practice and empty body in the practice room of the villa. The hall was still in the Barlow style. The windows were curved in an arc, creating an exaggerating visual effect. The decoration was complicated, full of vigor and vitality. Soon, Locke and Athena arrived at the hall. At the top of the hall was a vast sea of stars. In the center of the sea of stars was a pure white moon, emitting a soft luster, bright but not dazzling. The hall was about the size of 4 football fields. Rows of beautifully carved tables and chairs were arranged in the hall. Near the wall, there was a speech platform at the end of the hall. In the hall, many students in magic robes of other departments had come. In the Shalar Magic Academy, students of grade 1 in each department had to take part in the training, but the training time was different. Except for fire type, other students had finished their training half a month ago. In addition to the students of the Mage Academy, there were also many people from other forces. As the largest Mage Academy of Naden County, the annual dinner naturally invited many people from other forces. When Locke and Athena entered the hall, a girl in a volunteer's suit came up. "Mr. Capet, Miss Athena, please come to us." Under the guidance of the girl, the two came to seats especially for tutors. Locke also noticed that the representatives of other forces had gradually arrived, but there was still no one in the front seats. 10 minutes later, Count Grace entered the venue. After greeting Locke, he came to his seat. Then came Count Basil with a gloomy face, Count Brandon with a murderous look in his eyes, and Marquis Hyman with a happy face. In about half an hour, everyone was almost present, and the whole hall was very lively. Mallory waved his hand, signaling everyone to calm down. Under the magic effect, his voice reached everyone's ears. "Please be quiet, and listen to me." The crowd quieted down and all eyes were focused on Mallory. "On behalf of the Shalar Magic Academy, I would like to express my thanks to all the teachers, students and distinguished guests for witnessing the history of the Academy. Today, our dear students of Grade 1, Fire Type, have experienced the cruelest training in history. They are all brave men. I believe that they have completed the tempering of their lives and become braver, more resolute and stronger. Let's express our congratulations with the warmest applause." A round of applause broke out in the hall. Being praised in public, the students of Grade 1, Fire Type, also felt proud. Looking at the enthusiastic students off the stage, Mallory didn't waste their time. After a few simple words, he waved his hand and said, "Now, the dinner begins." At the same time, there were all kinds of delicious food on the table in an instant. Beautiful music echoed in the hall. With a young and radiant smile on their faces, the students of Grade 1, Fire Type were talking about the extraordinary journey. When it came to danger, they danced with joy and blushed. Locke and Athena too sat in their seats, drinking red wine happily. "Mr. Capet." A middle-aged bald man suddenly appeared in front of the two people, holding a glass of wine in his hand and wearing a flattering smile. Locke racked his brain to search for the man's information, but it was a pity that it was the first time he had seen the man in front of him. Besides, Locke felt sick of his flattering smile. "Let me introduce myself." Seeing the puzzled look on Locke's face, the middle-aged bald man said, "I'm Bertram Holder, the current head of the Holder family." Locke nodded slightly and greeted, "Hello, Mr. Holder. My son used to be your student." Bertram still wore a flattering smile on his face. However, he was so thoughtless before that he even transferred out of your class without permission. "Don't worry, I have taught him a serious lesson. So would you like to let him go back to your class?" Afraid that Locke wouldn't agree, the middle-aged man took out a space ring to store items and said in a low voice, "Don't worry. I have prepared a gift for you. I'm sure it will satisfy you." Under his expectant gaze, Locke shook his head slowly and said in a plain tone, "I'm sorry. My students are only in class 4 now. Mr. Capet, Mr. Holder, I think I have made it clear to you. Now, we are going to enjoy the party." Locke interrupted Bertram Holder. Bertram's face darkened in an instant, but when he thought of Locke's strength, he could only grit his teeth and turn around to leave. The rest of the parents who were about to come up stopped and dared not to come up again when they saw the failure of Count Bertram. Bryce chatted happily with Camp and the others, students of Grade 1, Fire Type. At this time, Camp suddenly looked Bryce behind him and signaled Bryce that there was someone behind him. Bryce turned around and saw Flynn standing behind him with a gloomy face. His cold eyes were full of jealousy and hatred. Staring at Bryce, Flynn said coldly, Bryce, do you still remember our agreement?" Without any fear, Bryce looked at Flynn and said with a smile, "Are you ready to lose face?" For the duel between the two people, the others were not too surprised. In order to make the dinner livelier, in the previous dinner, there would also be students who would take the initiative to participate in the duel. Moreover, the news that the young master from the Basil family was going to have a duel with the young master from the Hyman family had already spread throughout the school. Flynn stared at Bryce fiercely and said word by word, "I'll wait for you on the stage." If it was 2 days ago, he was indeed a little afraid of Bryce, but now, "Bryce, just wait for me to step on you. Mr. Marquis, I suggest you find a healer as soon as possible." Not far away, Count Basil swirled a glass of wine with a cold smile on his face. "Although I have told Flynn, they are all young people after all. He might hit him seriously." Marquis Hyman didn't show any anger. He sneered and replied indifferently, "Let's wait and see." At the same time, Mallory had known that the two were going to have a duel. He waved his hand, and the table and chair in the middle disappeared, and a duel table slowly rose from the ground. The others stood around the arena. Although there was another stage in the middle, it didn't seem crowded. Other people made way for the two. Soon Bryce and Mallory came to the arena. "Bryce, wait for me to beat you up." Looking at Bryce, Flynn wore an evil smile. As he spoke, his body lit up slightly. Then he wore a black magic cloak. At the same time, a magic wand appeared in his hand. He looked majestic, like a general about to go to the battlefield. In this way, Bryce looked extremely shabby. Wearing an ordinary magic robe, he had nothing in both hands. A level 2 magic wand, a level 2 magic cloak. Looking at the equipment on Flynn's body, the people around him sighed. Although they heard that Bryce's strength had increased, even comparable to a level 2 mage, now it seemed that he had no chance to win against Flynn, who held a magic wand and wore a magic cloak. Find updated novels on Note v. Elbant Company per meter. However, there was no change on Bryce's face. There was even a contemptuous smile on his face. "What? Are these external things your confidence?" In the face of Bryce's mockery, Flynn did not feel ashamed or angry. He sneered and said, "Money is also a part of your own strength." In the distance, seeing that Bryce had nothing, Mrs. Hyman looked at Marquis Hyman reproachfully. Seeing his wife looking at him reproachfully, Marquis Hyman said innocently, "Don't look at me. I've prepared these for him," but he said he wanted to defeat his opponent with his own strength and refused. Hearing this, Mrs. Hyman looked away and saw the two people on the stage again. The duel officially began. The two of them first greeted each other with the courtesy of a mage. All of a sudden, the moment the salute was over, a strong magical fluctuation exploded in front of Flynn. When Bryce looked over, a blade made of raging fire appeared in front of Flynn. A level 2 magic flame blade. The students outside the arena exclaimed. Flynn Basil has become a level 2 mage. All the people present were shocked by what they saw. Generally speaking, if one could become a level 2 mage at grade 1, he was absolutely God's favored one, such as Camp and Joanna from class 1. Among the students of grade 1, there were no more than 15 people who could become level 2 mages. Hearing the exclamations around, Flynn laughed complacently. In order to make him win, the Badal family had made a lot of effort. In the recent month, he had taken countless good pills. A level 2 mage. Although he was a little surprised, his speed was not slow. With a slight movement of his body, he left his original position. Flynn's magic directly smashed out of the arena. Facing the coming magic, the people around didn't panic at all. Just as the flame blade was about to fly out of the arena, a nearly transparent light curtain suddenly appeared around the arena. Boom! The blade made of fire hit the light curtain and exploded. Flynn didn't feel surprised that his attack failed. He waved the magic wand and condensed another magic ball. Without hesitation, Bryce quickly condensed a red fireball in his hand and instantly ran towards Flynn. Obviously, Flynn had seen how powerful Bryce's fireball spell was. He didn't dare to be arrogant and condensed a defensive shield of level 2 in front of him. Boom! The fireball exploded on the shield. Although it was supported by the magic wand, Flynn had just become a level 2 mage. It was obviously difficult to use a level 2 magic shield. Crack! The shield began to crack. Although the shield blocked most of the power of the fireball spell, the rest of the burning flames rushed towards Flynn. At this time, the magic cloak lit up with silver light, and the fire element, which was next to him, was all blocked outside. Not far from the battle ring, seeing that all the magic damage released by Bryce was blocked by the magic cloak, Cindy clenched her fists and shouted angrily, "Bastard, do you dare throw away the magic cloak and the magic wand? Are you worried about that guy?" When Cindy felt something was wrong with Bryce, she heard a faint voice. Hearing the familiar voice, Cindy restrained her anger. She turned around with a guilty conscience and saw a tall figure standing behind her. The middle-aged man was about 2 meters tall and burly, and his face was full of beard. Just standing there, he exuded a faint sense of oppression. Most importantly, the man looked at Bryce with hostility in his eyes. It felt like his treasure, which he had treasured for a long time, had been stolen. "Father." Cindy looked at the middle-aged man with a mustache and shouted weakly. Yes, the man in front of her was her father, a level 4 warrior, Count Tyson. "Father, aren't you drinking with Uncle Hyman over there? Why are you here?" Noticing the resentment in Count Tyson's eyes, Cindy asked with an awkward smile. Glancing at Bryce, Count Tyson snorted, "If I don't come over, are you going to live with the Hyman family directly?" He had already felt that there was something wrong between Cindy and Bryce. At first, he hadn't thought about it this way. But just now, Marquis Hyman suddenly came to him for a drink with a strange smile on his face. This guy even asked about his attitude towards Bryce indirectly. If one was hospitable to you without any reason, he must want to get something from you. He was confused at first, but when he saw his daughter who was cheering Bryce up, he immediately realized what had happened. As a result, he left Marquis Hyman behind and came over. Of course not. Cindy held Count Tyson's arm like a spoiled child, and said, "You will always be my dearest father, forever." Hearing this, Count Tyson's face softened a little. However, when he noticed that Cindy was staring at Bryce all the time when she said this, his eyes twitched 2 times. Obviously, his precious daughter had fallen in love with Bryce. Sure enough, his hunch was right. Bryce, that stupid boy, attracted his daughter. Just when Count Tyson was in a bad mood, the battle on the arena had reached a hot stage. Because of the magic prop in Flynn's hand, Bryce was at a disadvantage. Locke's physical training is useful. Some careful teachers found that although Bryce had been suppressed, the magic of Flynn didn't even do any harm to Bryce. Boom. Flynn's magic hit the magic shield condensed by Bryce. Bryce's magic shield is also unusual. With the magic of level 1, he can resist the attack of level 2 magic. I don't know if you have heard it or not. I heard that in the training, the students of Class 4, Grade 1 of Fire type, relied on the magic of level 1 to block the attack of level 4 magical beasts. It must be fake. Even if level 4 magical beasts stood still, level 1 mages couldn't hit them at all. Who said it was fake? I swear, I saw it with my own eyes. People around began to discuss. Bang. Flynn waved the magic wand and threw out magic again. Bryce dodged around with his body agility. Boom. Another magic hit Bryce. It's my turn. Bryce's eyes darkened and an evil smile appeared on his face. He quickly condensed a fireball in his hand and threw it in the direction of Flynn. He had already known that the magic of Bryce was very powerful. Although he had become a level 2 mage, Flynn still didn't dare to be arrogant. He didn't choose to answer it head-on, but dodged to the other side. Boom. Bryce's fireball exploded on the light curtain. Feeling the huge energy coming from beside him, Flynn breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, during his training, he had a general understanding of the way Bryce released the magic, so he kept an eye on it. However, just as he was rejoicing, he suddenly saw a huge foot coming towards his eyes. In a panic, he hurriedly used the magic, but unfortunately, the sole of the foot came so fast that he had no time to condense the complete magic. Puff. In the sharp pain, he only felt dizzy, and a strong sense of weightlessness came. Then he felt his body smashed to the ground. On the ground, Flynn rolled his eyes. There was a clear footprint on his face. Looking at Flynn on the ground, the students around fell into a temporary daze, as if they did not realize that the battle ended so hastily. After a short period of silence, there was a violent shout. On the VIP table, looking at the footprints on his son's face, Count Basil's complacent face directly turned livid. The footprint was like a humiliating brand, etched on the face of the Basil family. He is just a level 2 mage taking good pills, rubbish. Puff. Flynn, who had been in great pain, spat out a mouthful of blood when he heard this. He fell into a coma. All new chapters on November ELB and calm. On the arena, Bryce patted the dust off his clothes. He looked calm, as if he was a master. This guy, looking at the winning Bryce, Marquis Hyman had a smile on his face and asked, Count Basil, hasn't Bryce let you down yet? Hearing Marquis Hyman's mocking words, Count Basil's face darkened. In the distance, a member of the Basil family went up to check on Flynn. When he found that Flynn just fainted, he gave a hint to Count Basil, indicating that he was fine. Humph. With a flick of his sleeve, Count Basil left the scene with Flynn, who was completely in a coma. On the other side, looking at Bryce, who was in the spotlight, Count Brandon's face became even gloomier. Bryce, a waste of time, rose. It seemed that he needed to speed up the plan. When Bryce looked at Cindy complacently, his body stiffened. Count Tyson. When he saw the threatening eyes of Count Tyson, Bryce felt extremely afraid. Didn't my father get it done with Count Tyson? He looked at Marquis Hyman subconsciously and found that Marquis Hyman looked as if he could do nothing about it and he should pray for himself. You have to face it sooner or later. Be brave, Bryce Hyman. Bryce took a deep breath to calm himself down. He straightened his chest and strode towards Cindy and Count Tyson. However, as he got closer, he felt more and more stressed. Finally, Bryce could no longer hold on. He squeezed a flattering smile on his face and said, Uncle Tyson. Bryce, you are awesome. Cindy hugged Bryce with both hands, leaving a lip print on Bryce's face. Then she happily took Bryce's hand and introduced to Count Tyson, Dear father, I officially announce that Bryce will be my most important partner in the future. Hearing Cindy's words, the nervousness in Bryce's heart immediately disappeared. He said seriously, Uncle Tyson, I will definitely take good care of Cindy. Looking at the young man holding his daughter's hand, Count Tyson's face completely darkened. Suddenly, Count Tyson slowly walked towards Bryce. Seeing Count Tyson suddenly come over, Bryce's heart trembled. He wanted to step back subconsciously, but fortunately he managed to control himself. Puff. Just as Bryce was extremely nervous, a big hand patted him on the body. Tomorrow night, we will wait for you at our house. Looking at the wide back of Count Tyson, Bryce was a little stunned, and then a surprised look appeared on his face. Does he agree to our relationship? Even though she knew her father very well, Cindy was not sure about it at the moment. She said with uncertainty, maybe, he just wants to beat you up. Hearing this, the smile on Bryce's face gradually stiffened. After the fight between Bryce and Flynn, the atmosphere at the party became livelier. 2 more students came to the arena. Marquis Hyman and Count Grace came to greet Locke. They chatted for a while and got closer to Locke. Then the 2 left. Halfway through the dinner party, Athena felt bored and left first. As for Locke, he came to Mallory with a glass of wine. With a flick of his finger, a magic barrier was formed around them to isolate the conversation between the 2. After releasing the barrier, Locke said with a smile on his face, the training is over. Should you give me the reward? Don't worry. Everything is ready. Looking at Locke's anxious look, Mallory said with a smile. Then he waved his hand, and a book about level 5 wind magic appeared on the table. Locke didn't look through it and directly put it into the system space. Seeing that Locke had put away the magic book, Mallory raised his glass and said seriously, Locke, thank you. If Locke hadn't been there, the casualties would have been horrible. Locke gently clinked his glass with Malloy's. After taking a sip of the wine, he chuckled and said, if you really want to thank me, there's a chance now. Upon hearing this, Mallory put down his glass and looked at Locke warily. Then he asked slowly, what's the matter? Should he be so careful? Locke couldn't help complaining in his heart when he saw that Mallory was so cautious about him. After that, Locke stopped smiling and said, I'm going back to my own territory. Are you going back? Hearing this, Mallory's face changed. Did the Shalar Magic Academy do anything that displeased you? Locke shook his head and said with a smile, I'm the leader of Lister. I think Lister needs me more than the Shalar Magic Academy. You can also stay in the academy, and your territory can also develop, persuaded Mallory. Seeing that Locke's attitude was still firm and unchanged, he seemed to have made up his mind. He gritted his teeth and said, if you are willing to stay in the academy, I can give you the treatment as a vice dean. The treatment as a vice dean. Locke was a little surprised. He could tell that Mallory had tried his best to persuade Locke to stay. But as expected, Locke shook his head and refused. Seeing Locke's tough attitude, Mallory felt helpless. Finally, he sighed and said, "Well, let's talk about what you need my help first." All new chapters on November ELB and com. I set up a school in Lister. Locke took a sip of wine and said with a smile. A school. Mallory was a little stunned. After a while, he couldn't help but sigh, "You are so ambitious. I remember that Lister isn't so big, but you have already begun to build a school there." Locke smiled helplessly and said, "Now I need a lot of magic books, so." It was very clear that he hoped that Mallory could help him solve the problem of the magic book. Of course, Mallory understood what Locke meant. Looking at Locke, he fell silent slowly. After all, magic martial arts was the root of a force and were of great importance. Locke was not in a hurry. He just waited for Mallory quietly. Lowering his head, Mallory stared at his glass. After about 10 seconds, he raised his head and said in a low voice, "I can make a decision. I'll give you a copy of the magic book of level 4 and below." Hearing what Mallory said, Locke was a little surprised. As far as he knew, except for a few level 5 magic books, most of the magic books were level 4 and below. Mallory copied almost all the magic books in the Shalar Magic Academy. "I only have one demand. No, to be exact, it's a request." Fixing his eyes on Locke, Mallory said in a low voice, "I hope you can help me when the disaster happens to the Shalar Magic Academy." Not to mention Athena, a level 7 mage, but Locke was able to deal with the level 5 magical beasts now, and he must be promising. Locke was stunned for a moment. Looking into Mallory's eyes, he took a deep breath and said seriously, "If one day the Shalar Magic Academy is in trouble, I, Locke Capet, will never stand by and do nothing." Hearing Locke's promise, a smile appeared on Mallory's face. At the same time, he added, "If you want, the Academy competition will be held in 6 days. You can leave after the competition." The Academy competition. Locke was confused. Why didn't he know there was a big competition? You don't even know about the Academy competition. You are really not suitable to be a teacher of the Academy. Seeing Locke's confused look, Mallory scolded him with a smile. However, he still introduced, in order to promote the students' enterprising spirit, the Academy will hold a competition every year. The students of the same grade will compete on the stage and win the top 10. Of course, the top 10 students will be rewarded by the Academy. As he spoke, Mallory looked at Locke and added, "Of course, the teachers of the top 10 students will also receive a lot of rewards." Sure enough, when he said that teachers would also be rewarded, he only saw Locke's eyes lit up. He finally realized that Locke was a greedy little boy. On the other side, Locke also felt shocked and immediately became very interested in the competition. Nodding his head, he looked serious and said seriously, "As the teacher of Class 4, Fire type, I won't leave the school until the competition is completed." It had to be admitted that Locke was interested in the reward of the Academy. Of course, in fact, Locke didn't do that all for the sake of rewards. Since he came back from the training, the small universe in his body had come to a bottleneck, with the omen of breakthrough. Therefore, he planned to take good care of practice. Besides, he had the most important thing to do, charge interest. Hearing Locke's impassioned words, Mallory couldn't help but roll his eyes. After clinking glasses with Mallory, Locke didn't stay any longer. He removed sound insulation magic, stood up and left. On the second day, Mallory began to arrange for someone to copy the magic books, and Locke also entered practice completely. On the fourth day, Sleipnir lay on the lawn, feeling bored and dispirited. Leaning against the small rockery, he looked very strange. "Can't you just change into some better clothes?" He raised his head and looked at Thanatos's tattered clothes. Sleipnir said, "You are a god after all, aren't you? You are so poor that you can't even afford clothes." With a scornful sneer, Thanatos looked at Sleipnir arrogantly and said, "Don't you think this dress is more intimidating?" Sleipnir. When Sleipnir was speechless, a beautiful figure slowly walked towards them. At this moment, time seemed to slow down indefinitely. The soft and warm sunlight shone over the figure's head, making the figure seem to emit divine radiance, making people feel worship. With a closer look, he saw something on her white and slender fingers. At the sight of the figure, Sleipnir's eyes became dull, mixed with a trace of fear. Even Thanatos, who had always been cold, swallowed subconsciously. Come on, have a try. Her cold voice woke up Sleipnir and Thanatos. Sleipnir forced a smile and said, Athena, I've gained some weight after eating so much meat recently. How about I stop eating today? However, Athena just looked at it without saying anything. Vcite novel BNCOM for latest novels. Well, it seemed that it really couldn't escape. Seeing Athena nod her head, Sleipnir took a deep breath. As if it had made up its mind, it stretched out its stiff hoof and patted it gently. The steak on the plate flew up by itself. Looking at the 2 pieces of burnt steak on the plate, Thanatos also felt bad. Under Athena's gaze, Sleipnir closed its eyes and took a small bite. Sleipnir's mouth was visibly stiff for a moment, but soon returned to normal. It chewed and laughed. Athena, your cooking is really good. It's definitely a master of cooking. It's my honor to eat the steak you cook. Hearing Sleipnir's praise, Athena's face softened. Looking at Sleipnir who was flattering her, Thanatos couldn't help cursing in his heart. This stupid horse, could you be more spineless? As for Sleipnir, it had already ignored the disdainful look in Thanatos's eyes and continued to eat with relish. At this time, Athena's eyes moved slightly and fell on the man in front of her. Seeing that Athena was looking at him, Thanatos stiffened and seemed to accept his fate. But he waved his hand and pulled up steak from the plate with great force. Thanatos slowly put the steak into his mouth. As soon as Thanatos ate the steak, a bitter and scorching smell instantly filled his nostrils. It was too bad. When he was holding his breath and enduring the food in his mouth, he seemed to see something and his body stiffened again. In less than a minute, Sleipnir ate up the palm-sized steak. What made him even more speechless was that after eating, Sleipnir even put on an expression of unsatisfied taste. Seeing that Athena was looking at him with a questioning look, Thanatos paused for a moment and then looked at Sleipnir, who was enjoying the food beside him. He forced a smile on his originally cold face and said, not bad, or even very delicious. Hearing that, Athena nodded with satisfaction and went into the kitchen again with the plate. Ahem, ahem. When Athena left, Sleipnir, who had been enjoying the moment before, suddenly coughed violently. It seemed that it was going to cough out the trachea. As he coughed, he quickly ran to the small pool aside and gulped down a few mouthfuls of water. After drinking the water, it looked better and slowly walked back to its original position. Puff. Sleipnir turned around and collapsed on the lawn. On the other side, the look on its face darkened. It took a deep breath, suppressed nausea, and weakly leaned against a stone. When will Locke finish practice? Looking at Locke's practice place, Sleipnir said with a bitter face. Since Locke began to cultivate in seclusion and start practice, Athena seemed to be obsessed with cooking. It had been 3 days since Locke started his cultivation in seclusion. What's more, in the past 3 days, Athena hadn't improved her cooking skills at all. It was simply dark cuisine. It seems that I'm not suitable for cooking, Athena said dejectedly in the kitchen. She knew everything about Sleipnir and Thanatos. In a room on the 3rd floor of the villa, Locke's eyes were closed, and his legs were suspended in a ball of purple energy. Suddenly, the balance of the purple energy was destroyed and began to tremble slightly. At the same time, a strong force emerged from Locke's body. The 7 stars in Locke's body were constantly flashing, and the first 6 complete stars burst out a dazzling purple light. After that, they projected 6 energy laser beams, shooting at the 7th star with weaker light. The 7th star that received the new energy also burst out a strong light. Soon, the purple energy surrounding the 7th star began to shrink, and finally all poured into the 7th star. The energy in the room had also reached its peak. Surging purple divine power went through the room, and even formed a hurricane, blowing the curtains. Although the energy in the room was rampant, it was all blocked back by a purple light curtain. This was the protection array set up by Athena. It could prevent Locke from being disturbed, and at the same time, it could prevent too much noise from Locke's breakthrough. More than 10 minutes later, the energy riot in the house gradually returned to peace. Locke's long eyelashes trembled slightly, and then he saw him slowly opening his eyes. Swoosh. Feeling the powerful force coming from his body, Locke was a little excited. He finally reached the middle stage of the 7th sense of the small universe. Now, he was a real level 5 practitioner. Excited, he opened the attribute panel of the system. Host. Locke Caput. Race. Human race. Binding identity. Leader of Lister. Profession. A cultivator. Level. The seventh sense. Summoning God 1. Athena. Fondness. Friendship 73. Faith point. 4811. Summoning God 2. Asclepius. Fondness. Friendship 34. Faith point. 5921. Summoning God 3. Hephaestus. Fondness. Normal 70. Faith point. It could be opened after the divine temple was established. Summon God 4. Sleipnir. Fondness. Normal 40. Faith point. It could be opened after the divine temple was established. Summoning God 5. Thanatos. Fondness. Indifference 10. Faith point. It could be opened after the divine temple was established. When Locke saw the attribute panel, he was still a little surprised. Thanatos's fondness for him had risen by 10 points. At present, it seemed that the growth of the faith points of Athena and Asclepius had reached a bottleneck. It seemed that he had to find a way to improve the faith points of the two as soon as possible, so as to unlock the more powerful strength of the two. Only in this way could he and Lister grow and become stronger in the future turmoil. After thinking for a while, Locke stretched himself comfortably and walked out of the practice room slowly. He walked out of the villa. "Oh, dear Locke, you are finally fine." Sleipnir was so excited to see Locke. And Thanatos also showed an expression of seeing his savior. "What's wrong with you?" Looking at the strange behavior of the two people, Locke was confused. "You don't know," Sleipnir looked excited. It was about to tell Locke about the painful experience in the past 3 days, but it seemed to find something and its body trembled slightly. In a second, he turned his pain into joy. "I haven't seen you for a few days. I miss you so much." Then it laughed awkwardly. It seemed that it was really happy to see Locke. Looking at Sleipnir's exaggerated expression, Locke couldn't help but roll his eyes. He wouldn't believe such a ridiculous reason. But he didn't want to talk to Sleipnir now. He turned around, opened his arms and held the girl behind him. In this way, Locke held Athena in his arms, looked into Athena's beautiful eyes and said with a smile, "I have made a breakthrough." As he spoke, Locke couldn't help smiling again. "Locke Capet, you were so smart. You could hold Athena in your arms above board like this." Discover new chapters on n0val.com. Athena didn't struggle but looked at Locke with a faint smile. Seeing Locke holding Athena in his arms, Sleipnir and Thanatos took a deep breath and left quietly. "Now that you have made a breakthrough, let's practice it." Looking at the complacent Locke, Athena smiled. He had to pay something for taking advantage of her. Hearing this, the smile on Locke's face suddenly froze. At the same time, he just felt frightened. The scene where he had been ravaged by Athena came to his mind again. Taking a deep breath, Locke let go of Athena slowly with an awkward smile on his face. "Or, forget it. I'll wait for you in the practice room." With a chilling smile on her face, Athena turned around and walked towards the practice room. There was a small training ground under each villa for teachers to train. The teachers who were obsessed with experiments even changed the training ground into a laboratory for all kinds of experiments. On the training ground, Sleipnir and Thanatos were sitting comfortably on the wall, gloating. On the stage, looking at Athena's icy face, Locke said with a long face, "I don't want to lose my face." At this time, Athena turned into a cold goddess again. Her eyes were cold and her whole body exuded a strong aura. Ignoring Locke's words, Athena's eyes darkened. She said slowly, "Let's begin." Knowing that he couldn't escape, Locke didn't think about anything else. Instead, he put on a serious look. Swoosh. He let out a long breath and the small universe in his body worked quickly. Clang. The sword in the stone flew out of the system and fell into his hand. A powerful force burst out from his body and poured into the sword in the stone, causing the sword in the stone to emit bursts of sounds. As for Athena, she was still standing there expressionlessly, without any fluctuation of divine power on her body, as if what would happen next had nothing to do with her. Everything was ready. Staring at Athena in the distance, Locke's eyes narrowed and his body turned into a shadow, stabbing towards Athena. In the blink of an eye, Locke had already rushed in front of Athena, with the tip of his sword pointing at Athena's throat. In the face of Athena, Locke knew that he didn't need to show mercy, so he tried his best to compete with her. He knew that even the most powerful move could not hurt Athena at all. Bang! Just as the tip of the sword was about to pierce Athena's throat, Athena's hand had already slapped on the sword in the stone. A strong force passed through the blade of the sword in the stone to Locke's palm. All of a sudden, Locke felt that his hand holding the sword in the stone was numb, and the sword in the stone in his hand was almost thrown away. The blow failed. Without any hesitation, Locke jumped backwards, intending to keep a distance from Athena. However, he suddenly found that Athena was gone. At the same time, he felt an extremely dangerous aura coming from behind him. So fast. While sighing, the small universe in Locke's body revolved crazily, and the divine power continued to refine the magic element. At a fast speed, a fire magic shield of level 4 was formed behind him. Bang! Athena slapped on the magic shield. Crack! Athena's palm only paused for a moment, and then the magic shield began to crack and then completely broke. At this time, Locke also turned around and retreated to the distance with the help of the impact. He once again distanced himself from Athena. After standing firm in the distance, Locke held the sword in the stone tightly and didn't dare to relax a little. He stared at Athena with a serious face. Not bad. Athena didn't continue to attack. She looked at Locke, who was standing far away in a defensive posture, and nodded. Locke breathed more heavily. He looked at Athena in the distance, who was wearing a calm face, with sweat on his forehead. Although he avoided Athena's attack, he knew that Athena didn't use her full strength at all. Locke shouted in a low voice, and the sword in the stone in his hand suddenly left his hand and directly stabbed at Athena. At the same time, the level 4 magic quickly condensed in his hand. Athena waved her hand and the sword in the stone was thrown away. On the other side, the magic power in Locke's hands was also prepared and he threw it towards Athena. Boom! The magic exploded in front of Athena, and the huge flame instantly swept half of the practice room. The wall of the practice room emitted a faint luster, and it was detected that there was a magic attack, so the defensive magic array on the wall began to automatically defend. After throwing the fire magic, Locke didn't stop attacking. The wood energy in front of him was gathered, and a vine rose from the ground and instantly wrapped around Athena's ankle. At the same time, his hands intertwined, and a stronger magical fluctuation appeared in front of him. It seems that Locke is trying to use the big move, Sleipnir exclaimed. While it was speaking, the magic power in Locke's hand had been condensed. It was a huge spear. The spear was emitting hot flames, and the arrowhead was red. This was the level 5 fire magic, the flame spear sent by Mallory last time. The scarlet spear had already stabbed towards Athena. Boom! Wherever the spear passed, the ground cracked, and even the wall in the distance was affected by the energy. The array textures that were engraved with the magic array began to crack. "Do you want to demolish this house?" Sleipnir complained. As it spoke, a beam of light came out from its head. The light spread out and formed a light curtain, separating the energy from the wall. Boom! Athena was instantly shrouded in the endless fire. The huge fire waves swept through the narrow space, instantly sweeping over everyone and things. Without Sleipnir's protection, the villa would have collapsed. Half a minute later, the flames in the practice room gradually dissipated. Locke gasped and sweated on his forehead. He knew he was no match for Athena, so he planned to slow down Athena with vines and then release his strongest attack. Sure enough, the higher the level of magic, the more difficult it was to use. For example, Locke could release the previous magic of level 1 or level 2 at a glance. It was the first time for him to use level 5 magic, which was somewhat difficult. At the center of the explosion, where Athena was, the flames finally dissipated. A thin purple light curtain surrounded Athena, keeping all the harm out of her. As for Athena, she looked calm. Yes, the attack is close to a level 6 mage in this world. Athena waved her hand and the defensive light curtain in front of her disappeared. The strength gap among the high-level practitioners was more obvious. With some special methods, such as magic releasing skills or fighting skills, a level 1 practitioner might be able to defeat a level 2 practitioner. However, there was absolutely a huge difference between the strength of practitioners beyond level 6. When he was a low-level practitioner, Locke was able to defeat a practitioner 1 level or even 2 levels higher than him by virtue of his small universe. But now, he had just broken through to the middle stage of the 7 senses, and his strength was barely comparable to that of a level 6 practitioner. As she spoke, Athena's face darkened slightly, and a cold light burst out from her eyes. Damn it! Seeing this, Locke's heart couldn't help but twitch. After getting along with Athena for so long, she knew that when Athena showed this expression, it meant that she was going to be serious. Sure enough, the next moment, Athena moved extremely fast and appeared in front of Locke in an instant. Now it was too late to retreat. Locke crossed his arms over his chest to resist Athena's attack. Bang! Athena put her hand on Locke's arm. Under the great impact, Locke's body was forced to retreat for more than 10 meters before he could stabilize himself. Swoosh! Locke heaved a sigh of relief and took a move. The moment he took Athena's attack, he only felt an iron plate smashing on his arms, causing a strong pain. After the blow, Athena didn't stop and rushed towards Locke again. She didn't use any magical power or skills she had learned. Locke tried to dodge Athena's attack, but unfortunately, Athena was so fast that he had no choice but to retreat. Boom! Locke was slapped against the wall by Athena. Hiss! With Sleipnir's help, Locke was sure that the wall was as hard as black iron. When he felt a sharp pain in his back, he only felt a blurred vision. When he came to his senses, Athena appeared in front of him again. Bang! When Locke was about to run away, he was slapped away by Athena again. Bang! Bang! The sound of his body hitting a hard object echoed in the room. Sleipnir and Thanatos, who had been watching the play aside, looked at Locke in the practice room, who was tortured by Athena. The two of them gasped. Well, Athena was still the same Athena. Half an hour later. Swoosh! Sleipnir stepped out of the villa and walked cautiously to the place where it often slept. Behind it was Thanatos, who looked cold but still had a lingering fear. A few seconds later, Athena walked out of the villa. At last, it was Locke who was beaten black and blue and in rags. On the second day, Locke entered practice again. In addition to recovering from his injuries, he also needed to stabilize his cultivation base. The whole academy became more and more lively. The teachers began to prepare for the magic competition, and the students were also passionate and eager to show themselves in the competition. Tonight, there were many stars hanging in the sky. The bright moonlight poured on the various buildings of the huge and winding city. On the top of a garret, the moonlight cast two slender shadows. Following the source of the shadows, two figures in black robes could be seen. Their faces were covered by a long robe, and on the hats of the robes, there were two fox masks. The two people in black robes just looked at the distance. Quietly. Not far from the building, there was a huge manor, surrounded by a tall wall. Inside the manor, there were many well-built and luxuriously decorated buildings. The manor was brightly lit. There was a whistle about 100 meters away, and a team of patrolling guards on the road. "It's so ugly," she pulled her black robe and said in a cold voice with obvious disgust. While she was complaining, the woman had already taken off her mask, under which there was a beautiful face. Hearing the dissatisfied tone of the person next to him, the person on the left took off the hat on the black robe, and then took off the mask. With a helpless smile, he said, "It is the best clothes I can find." Athena snorted and stopped thinking about the matter in the black robe. The two looked at the manor in the distance. With an evil smile, Locke slowly put on the hat on his black robe and said, "Finish it early and go back to sleep." Athena nodded and put on the black robe and mask again. At the same time, she lightly tapped her index finger. An array of fluorescent light flew into Locke's body, and Locke's body suddenly flashed with a faint luster. However, the luster soon disappeared from Locke's body. If there were anyone else present, they would have found that with Athena's help, Locke's breath immediately disappeared in the air. After hiding their breath, the two jumped up and rushed towards the manor. Find updated novels on Note v. Elbant Company per meter. Although there were many guards in the manor, no one found Locke and Athena, who had sneaked into the manor. 10 minutes later. "It's right in front of us." Pointing at the huge building in front of them, Athena said softly. Looking in the direction pointed by Athena, he could see a building with 3 stories in the distance. The whole building was cut by rocks and looked heavy and primitive. In front of the building, there were 2 squads of guards. Locke checked the 15 guards and found that they were all level 3 practitioners. The 2 leading guards were even level 4 practitioners, a mage and a swordsman. Locke's divine consciousness continued to explore the building and found that there seemed to be a magic array that could block and detect. "It seems that this is the treasure house of the Brandon family." Locke nodded and said in a low voice, "Attack directly." Athena walked out slowly from behind the wall with cold eyes. Looking at Athena's back, Locke couldn't help giving her a thumbs up. Athena could be so righteous even if it was a robbery. And Athena had already appeared in front of the treasure house. "Stop. There is an intruder," the guard in front of the treasure house shouted. At the same time, a signal bomb soared into the sky, bursting out brilliant fireworks in the night sky. One of them, a level 4 mage, waved the magic in his hand and threw it towards Athena. With a wave of Athena's hand, the magic was directly smashed away by Athena towards the building in the distance. Boom! In the distance, a beautifully decorated building was directly exploded. Earth and stone beams flew in the air, and huge flames soared into the sky. Seeing that his magic had actually attacked the family building, the level 4 mage looked terrible in an instant. However, the most important thing right now was to protect the treasure house. The treasure house was the lifeblood of the Brandon family. If anything happened to the treasure house, he would be the sinner of the Brandon family. The rest of the guards rushed towards Athena. All of a sudden, at this time, the ground began to shake slightly. "Watch out!" Another level 4 swordsman seemed to feel something and shouted at his men behind him. However, it was too late for the guards to dodge. They were stabbed through by the barbs formed by rocks and died on the spot. The one who used the magic of level 4 was Locke. Although Locke was not a murderer, he would not show mercy to his enemies. After all, it wouldn't be better if the Brandon family took over his territory. At this time, Locke came to Athena's side. Looking at the clansman who was dying in an instant, the level 4 mage was furious. He wished he could swallow Locke and Athena alive. But now he also knew that he and the others alone might not be a match for the two people in black robes in front of him, so he shouted, "Hold on. The family's support is coming soon." At the same time, the magic power of level 4 in his hand had been condensed and thrown towards Athena and Locke. The other surviving mages also came to their senses and threw out their own magic, while the other level 4 swordsmen, warriors and swordsmen were guarding in front of the mage. Now what they needed to do was not to kill the intruders. To stop them, all they needed to do now was to stop the other party and wait for the support of their clan. Boom! The magic with powerful auras came at Locke and Athena one by one. However, he was going to be disappointed. A light curtain was emitted around the two of them, blocking all the attacks. The two didn't stop at all and walked towards the treasure house leisurely. At the same time, Locke used the earth magic again, stabbing rocks in the direction of the guard. Bang! After the fight, except for 2 level 4 practitioners, the other guards were injured or dead. Locke and Athena had arrived in front of the 2 level 4 practitioners, which was the gate of the treasure house. With a wave of Athena's hand, 2 level 4 practitioners were swept away. Bang! The two had already smashed into the ground in the distance, and at the same time, there was a sound of broken bones. When they looked again, the two died completely. After killing the Brandon family's guards, the two came to the door which was more than 2 meters high. Without wasting any time, Athena knocked on the door. Boom! The huge door trembled slightly, and before the magic array on it could be activated, it directly broke apart. Locke and Athena too strode in. Brandon's family is so rich. Looking at the boxes of gold coins on the ground, Locke took a deep breath, shocked. With divine consciousness, he soon knew the total number of the boxes. There were 60 boxes of gold coins in total. Money. It was all money. The shock in Locke's eyes turned into excitement, and he was extremely happy. "Ha ha, in that case, I won't be so polite." With extreme excitement, Locke waved his hand and put all the gold coins into the system space. In an instant, there was nothing on the first floor. Looking at Locke, who seemed to have got the most precious treasure, Athena shook her head with a smile, turned around and walked towards floor 2. Locke also woke up from excitement and hurried to catch up with Athena. There was also a magic door at the entrance of the second floor. According to Locke's estimation, it could at least resist the magic of level 4. If he met someone else, it might take him some time to go up. Boom! Just then, the magic door was smashed into pieces. Locke and Athena walked in. The second floor was divided into 2 parts, the book area on the left and the weapon area on the right. Explore new novels on novel.com. With a wave of Locke's hand, all the weapons and magic books entered the system space. Although the system was cold and distant, and had never communicated with Locke other than issuing tasks or giving rewards, the system space was surprisingly large, as if it had no boundaries. With a loud bang, Locke and Athena entered the 3rd floor. Compared with the first two floors, the decoration of the third floor was more exquisite. On the left side was a row of ancient and magnificent bookshelves. Under the orange light, the bookshelves and the books on them looked more charming. Locke took a look at the level 4 magic books and martial arts skills. He walked into the corridor and came to the innermost part of the bookshelves. As he went deeper, a bookshelf with exquisite rose patterns appeared in front of him. I didn't expect the Brandon family to have level 5 thunder magic. Excitement flashed in Locke's eyes. Together with the 2 level 5 magic books obtained from the Shalar Magic Academy, he had 3 level 5 magic books now. After robbing the Brandon family, he was no worse than any major force of Naden County just by virtue of the magic books. With a wave of Locke's hand, the magic books and martial arts skills on the table suddenly disappeared and all fell into the system space. In the middle of the third floor, there were several pieces of magic crystal stones of different systems placed on the ancient wooden shelf, mainly fire magic crystal stones and fire magic crystal stones. Locke counted and found that there were about 200 of them. A magic crystal stone costs 10,000 gold coins. The total price here is 2 million gold coins. Locke took a deep breath and said excitedly. Athena picked up a water magic crystal stone with a sky blue luster and said, "It's full of impurities and is useless for practice. But it's pretty good." Then she threw it to Locke. Touching the magic crystal stone, Locke said happily, "These are all money." He worked as a tutor in the Shalar Magic Academy, and got 2 fire magic crystal stones a month. Locke practiced magic power directly, and the magic crystal stone didn't have any effect on his practice, so he put it directly into the system space. However, the magic crystal stone was the core material for making the magic array and magic crystal cannon, which were quite valuable. Just as Locke felt happy secretly, a crowd of people gathered outside the treasure house. Locke knew that the members of the Brandon family had come to their senses. Without wasting any more time, Locke quickly put the magic crystal stones into the system space, and then came to the weapon area on the right. There were some magic wands, big swords and so on, and Locke also put them in the system space as usual. Satisfied with the empty bookshelves and weapon rack, the two slowly walked out of the treasure house. With a closer look, the treasure house was surrounded. The one who took the lead was Butler Dinah, who had been following Count Brandon. Butler Dinah's face was extremely gloomy. Looking at the two people, Locke and Athena, his eyes flashed with coldness. "You two, who are you?" "The people destroying the Brandon family." A hoarse and deep voice came from under Locke's mask. Wrapped in the divine power, his voice had completely changed. But he was curious why Count Brandon wasn't there. "Destroy the Brandon family." With a sneer, Butler Dinah's eyes darkened. He looked at Locke and Athena and said, "You two, I'm just kidding. Now, put down the things you got from the treasure house, and I can let you go." He did not choose to take action directly, but hoped to protect the interests of his family through negotiation. At present, the most important thing was to keep the family's magic books, magic crystal stones, martial arts skills and weapons. Moreover, he knew the strength of the 2 level 4 practitioners, so the 2 people in black robes in front of him were very powerful. "You want it?" Locke stretched out his hand and looked at Count Brandon playfully. "Take it yourself if you want." Noticing the banter in Locke's words, Butler Dinah turned aggressive. "Do you really want to fight against the Brandon family till the end of your life?" Hearing Butler Dinah's words, Locke sneered, and his eyes under the mask suddenly turned cold. He asked with a faint smile, "Do you also deserve it?" Butler Dinah's face suddenly turned cold. He knew that only the two were here to make trouble. And the guards of the Brandon family around them were also full of killing intent on their faces. The 2 bastards in front of him dared to insult the Brandon family. They were unforgivable. What happened? A round old man with a white beard came up. At this time, the old man's eyes were cold, and from time to time, there was killing intent in his eyes. With his solemn expression, he looked very powerful. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Brandon." The moment he saw the old man, the coldness on Butler Dinah's face disappeared, and he showed strong respect. He bowed to the old count and said, "The thieves broke into the treasure house and stole the treasure. Please help me." Seeing the appearance of the old count, Butler Dinah was relieved. He thought it was 2 little thieves who broke into the treasure house, but after seeing the miserable situation of the 2 level 4 practitioners, he knew that the strength of Locke and Athena was absolutely strong. The old count, Gil Brandon, was obsessed with practice, so they passed down the title to Count Brandon, the present count many years ago. Now, he was even a powerful level 5 Thunder Mage. As a rare powerful Thunder Mage, the old Count was undoubtedly powerful. The two little thieves could only surrender. The old Count slowly walked up to the people of the Brandon family. Looking in the direction of Locke and Athena, he said in a gloomy tone, "You two, it's not easy to take the things in the Brandon family." "Are you sure?" Locke held his hands and said with disdain, "But I think it's very simple. Maybe the people from the Brandon family were too good for nothing." "I'm sorry. I'm not targeting those people. I mean, all the members of the Brandon family present are losers." Bang. As soon as Locke finished his words, the guards of the Brandon family around felt very angry in an instant. If it weren't for the presence of the Count, they would have rushed in the direction of Locke. "You are courting death." As for Mr. Count, his eyes were also filled with coldness. He slowly raised his palm, and a light ball filled with lightning gradually appeared in his palm. Just now, Mr. Old Count didn't take action at once, because he had scruples. He didn't feel any energy from Athena and Locke. There were only 3 possibilities. The first one was that the 2 men in front of him were ordinary people and had never practiced. But since they could kill so many guards of the Brandon family, it was impossible for them to have no cultivation base, so this could be excluded. Second, they had treasures that could block others' detection, so he couldn't detect their cultivation bases. Third, they were super masters, which had far exceeded his cultivation base. However, even though he was at level 5, he could still feel a little aura from level 6 mages. As for level 7 practitioners, he directly ignored it. It was rare in the whole Grim Kingdom, not to mention in the Naden County. What's more, would level 7 mages be interested in their treasure house? In the entire Naden County, so far, even level 5 practitioner was relatively rare, not to mention level 6 practitioners except for the guy named Fisher in the Shalar Magic Academy. All in all, the 2 black robes in front of him should be level 4 or level 5 practitioners with blocking treasures. Puff. After thinking it over, the old Count threw the light ball in his hand towards the defense line of Athena and Locke without hesitation. Fighting spirit flashed in Locke's eyes. He came to Athena and said, "Leave it to me." It happened that he broke through to the middle stage of the 7th sense of the small universe, and free sparring came. At the same time, the earth element in front of Locke began to move crazily, instantly forming a huge stone wall. Boom! The thunder ball hit the stone wall, and the powerful explosion once again raised the dust all over the sky. Sure enough, was it only a level 4 earth mage? Seeing Locke's earth magic, Mr. Old Count sneered imperceptibly. A mere level 4 mage dared to provoke the Brandon family. He was courting death. However, the sneer on his face suddenly stiffened. Although there were cracks on the stone wall, it actually resisted his level 5 magic. He has some strength. Mr. Old Count's face became colder and his eyes were full of killing intent. No wonder you dare to steal from Brandon's family. As the smoke dissipated, Mr. Old Count's pupils narrowed slightly. Unexpectedly, Athena behind Locke had disappeared. If we catch this person, the other one won't be able to escape. Mr. Old Count said lightly. As he spoke, the thunder element in front of him began to move. With the magic of the Old Count, a lightning zone of more than 10 meters above Locke's head was formed. Boom. Most up-to-date novels are published on N0 Velb and Company per meter. A bolt of lightning struck down from the thunder area. Locke jumped backward to avoid the attack of the lightning. No wonder it was thunder magic. Its power was indeed extraordinary. Looking at the big hole in his previous seat, Locke sighed in his heart. After Locke dodged, another lightning struck down. In a hurry, Locke condensed the level 4 magic of Earth in his hand and rushed towards the lightning. Boom! The lightning collided with the long sword of the Earth magic. The long sword was smashed into pieces, but fortunately, the energy of the lightning was also exhausted. Just as Locke was dodging the lightning attack, on the top of the garret where he and Athena had stood before, Athena was sitting by the wall of the garret, with her legs in midair, quietly watching the battle below. Bang! Under the impact of the earth magic, a crack appeared in the thunder zone. Locke rushed out of the crack. He jumped into the distance. "Bastard, where are you going?" Mr. Old Count shouted coldly and chased after Locke. Turning around to look at the Old Count, Locke smiled wickedly. At the same time, the level 4 earth magic called Earth Crack was quickly condensed in his hand. It was a large-scale land-sinking magic suitable for the army battlefield. After the condensation was finished, Locke immediately threw it to the ground. Boom! The ground began to shake, and then cracks appeared on the ground where Locke cast the magic. The crack expanded rapidly, and in a few breaths, it had expanded from a few centimeters to a few meters. Boom! 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 With the collapse of the ground, the building under Locke's feet could no longer hold on. A few seconds later, the luxuriously decorated building had turned into ruins. As for Locke, he had already jumped into another building before the building collapsed. Fuck. Damn it. I will make you beg for death. Seeing the building of the Brandon family was destroyed, the old count finally stopped hiding his anger. Seeing Locke stop on another building, all the members of the Brandon family stopped. The magic condensed in the hands of the mages was tightly held in their hands and did not release for a while. Seeing that the Brandon family began to be wary of him, Locke laughed and once again condensed the earth magic, throwing it towards the building below him. How dare you! Seeing that, Locke was going to use the magic again. Mr. Old Count roared. The magic condensed in his hand had already smashed at the position of Locke, hoping to stop Locke. However, it was still too late. The earth magic crack in Locke's hand had broken through the building and hit the ground. Boom! The lofty attic turned into ruins. Don't hold back. Catch him directly. Obviously, Mr. Old Count had seen through Locke's intention. His face darkened and he said decisively. If he didn't stop Locke as soon as possible, the Brandon family would suffer a greater loss. Upon hearing the order, the other members of the Brandon family didn't show mercy anymore. All the magic in their hands was thrown towards Locke. Locke shuttled rapidly between the buildings. Although the members of the Brandon family had tried their best to avoid destroying the family's buildings, Locke would use the earth magic as long as there was a gap when they moved to another building. Therefore, even if these buildings were not destroyed by the magic of the Brandon family, they would still be destroyed by Locke. Locke had turned into a ruthless demolishing machine. Boom! Boom! In just a few minutes, a large area of ruins had appeared in the building of the Brandon family. Something happened to the Brandon family. Outside the manor, there were many spies hiding in the darkness. When they saw the rising fire in the manor of the Brandon family and the loud explosion sound, they were all shocked. Without any hesitation, they reported the situation of the Brandon family to the forces behind them. In the manor, looking at the ruins in the distance, Mr. Old Count's eyes were bloodshot and full of killing intent. It took the Brandon family decades to build these houses, but now they were destroyed. However, he couldn't do anything to Locke. He could only watch Locke destroy the buildings of the Brandon family. We can't go on like this. Looking at the skillful Locke in the distance, the old count seemed to have made up his mind. I'll trap him and use the magic crystal cannon. While saying that, the old count rushed towards Locke again. He also threw out the level 5 magic. Butler Dinah was stunned. The destructive power of the magic crystal cannon was too great. Using the magic crystal cannon here might cause greater damage. But now, the magic crystal seemed to be the only choice. Boom! Locke turned around and walked towards a 2-story building in the distance. Soon, he had condensed a sword in his hand. In that case, with a cold killing intent in his eyes, Mr. Old Count said, then go to hell. As soon as Mr. Old Count finished his words, a white light from the distance shot straight in the direction of Locke and Athena. It was as fast as lightning, and in the blink of an eye, it had arrived in front of Locke. A magic crystal cannon. Sensing the turbulent aura from afar, Locke said happily, it just happens that a magic crystal cannon is needed. Judging from the power, it should be a level 6 magic crystal cannon. Looking at the surging energy coming straight at him, Locke did not choose to push it away. He took a deep breath and his face gradually became serious. Boom! Instantly, Locke was surrounded by the energy of the magic crystal cannon, which hit Locke's laser column and continued to shoot backward. A big hole with a diameter of more than 10 meters was directly shot out from the 8 tall buildings. In the distance, seeing the man in the black robe being shot by the magic crystal, the old count showed a ruthless expression. Now, he only hoped that his opponent would not take too many treasures with him, or else they would be annihilated by the energy of the magic crystal cannon. Of course, even if it was destroyed, it was better than being exiled. Boom! The energy column of the magic crystal cannon drew a long ditch. With a loud bang, endless dust rose. A minute later, the dust gradually dissipated and his eyes looked towards the center of the explosion step by step. The ground was completely broken, and a rugged pit appeared. However, when they continued to look inside, both Count Brandon and the other members of the Brandon family were shocked. The sleeves had been burned to ashes, and the entire black robe was covered with burned holes from which even the skin that was burnt by energy could be seen. At present, he looked a little more dejected than Thanatos. The hat on the black robe was also removed under the powerful energy wave, but the mask under the black robe was indeed intact. Puff. Locke half knelt on the ground and breathed heavily. If he hadn't endured it, he would have spurted blood. Well, he admitted that he was a little unable to resist the level 6 magic crystal cannon. When the magic crystal cannon shot over, he quickly used a level 4 earth defensive magic, and then used all his strength to form an energy shield around him, especially around his face, which was his most important position to protect. It was not until he exhausted all his strength that he barely resisted the attack of the magic crystal cannon. He survived. The man in the black robe survived the attack of the level 6 magic crystal cannon. Under normal circumstances, in the face of the level 6 magic crystal cannon, even level 6 practitioners would temporarily avoid them. However, a level 4 earth mage blocked it. Could it be that the man in the black robe concealed his real strength? Was it a level 6 earth mage? No, although he blocked the attack of the magic crystal cannon, the opponent's breath was weak. It was obvious that his physical strength was exhausted. Therefore, the opponent should still be a level 4 mage, but with something, he could resist the attack of the magic crystal cannon. If he was a level 6 mage, although he would be in a difficult situation, his magic power shouldn't be exhausted at the moment. No matter what, since the opponent's magic power had been used up, he would be at the mercy of others. Arrest him. A hint of cruelty flashed in the old count's eyes. He would like to see which force dared to attack the treasure house of the Brandon family. Moreover, he wouldn't let the man in the black robe die too easily. Butler Dinah waved his hand to catch Locke. However, the Brandon family members nodded and cautiously moved towards Locke with their weapons in their hands. Although they also knew that Locke was a spent arrow, they didn't dare to be careless because they didn't know if the other party had any secret weapons. Bang! Just as they slowly moved, they suddenly saw a black shadow. At the same time, the black shadow smashed on the ground like a cannonball. Most up-to-date novels are published on N0 Velb and Company per meter. Those people only felt a shock wave coming. A figure with broken bones came from their bodies, and then a severe pain came from their bodies. Their internal organs seemed to be broken, and they passed out in this suffocating pain. These were the feelings of the 4 people who were close to Locke. In the eyes of others, they only saw that the man in the black robe who had escaped before was like a god, and the shock wave caused by falling on the ground directly sent them away. After Athena appeared, Locke also completely relaxed. He directly sat on the ground, took out 2 pills from the system space to recover his strength, and then threw them into his mouth to silently recover the strength. Boom! Another explosion came from the distance, and then a milky white energy column shot towards Athena. Seeing Athena, Mr. Old Count ordered without hesitation. Athena raised her hand and pointed at the energy column. The moment the energy column reached Athena's palm, it turned a corner and shot towards the direction of the Old Count. No way, Mr. Old Count widened his eyes and looked at everything in disbelief. At the same time, looking at the energy column of the magic crystal cannon rushing towards him, the shock in his eyes gradually turned into a strong fear. He began to dodge aside madly. No, the Brandon family was about to reach its peak. I couldn't die. With a strong desire to survive, his speed was even faster, but no matter how fast he was, it was not as fast as the energy column. Boom! In an instant, the Old Count was hit by the energy column. Defenselessly, the Old Count was decomposed at a visible speed and finally completely disappeared. The other members of the Brandon family who were close to the energy column were also crazily far away from the attack range of the energy column. However, the energy column was like a powerful tornado, constantly absorbing the surrounding people and buildings. Although everyone escaped very fast, many people were still swept into the energy column by the powerful energy fluctuations. Slap! Half of the bricks fell down from the dilapidated house. One by one, the guards of the Brandon family stood up from the ruins. Their clothes were tattered, and their eyes were full of panic. Ahem. Butler Dinah opened the wooden stone on his body. His hair was in a mess and his face was charred. He staggered to his feet. He was far away from the energy column, so he survived by luck.
Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe and see you in the next chapter.